Yep, I'm
right,
here.
thank
There we go. We can hear you now.
All right.
Okay, sorry, I said hi a couple times. You guys didn't hear me?
Yep.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board meeting. I call this meeting to order at 7:01. The public is invited to call 603-766-5646. Enter participant code 685-562 if you wish to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Please wait for the chair's instructions and then press star 9. Your microphone will be unmuted and you will be directed to state your name and address prior to making your public comment. You can also email your public comment to denise.morin@sau19.org prior to 3 o'clock of the meeting date. Please indicate public comment, today's date, Goffstown School Board meeting, in the subject line and include your name and address, and limit your comments to no more than 500 words. The board reserves the right to read your public comment during the meeting. However, any public comment will be included in the official meeting minutes. The board meeting can be viewed on GTV 16 on demand and will also be streamed live on the GTV YouTube channel. We do have a board member on the phone, Janelle O'Brien. Can you say here and if you're alone?
Here and alone.
Thank you, Janelle. Anyone else on there, Scott?
That's it.
Okay, so if everybody can rise for the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're going to start with correspondence.
This evening, we have a number of things from the New Hampshire School Boards Association that I thought the board would continue to have interest, particularly pertaining to the many, many bills that are in the final stages going through the House and the Senate. So there are far too many to count. And I also shared a letter that Mrs. Kohler had sent out today regarding the process for determining math placement in 7th grade. So I think there are a couple of minor changes there, so I wanted to make sure the board had the chance to see Mrs. Kohler's letter. And as luck would have it, she's right back there. So if anyone had any questions for Wendy, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. But this is something that periodically comes up for board members, so I wanted to make sure you were aware.
Great, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Accommodations, good news. Caleb?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the student athletes and coaches. They've done a fantastic job this season. Even when they aren't winning, they're still playing hard. One calls to mind the volleyball game recently where they went 5 games and they were all by a very narrow margin. They only ended up winning. They ended up losing 2-3, but it was still a fantastic game.
Nice.
And also, I don't know if you're aware, the student choreographers we have here, they're currently working on some pieces for the dance gala on June 5th. So I'm excited to see what they have to come up with. We've got some real talent here.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb. Anyone else with accommodations, good news? Ginny?
Yes. I'm proud to let you guys know that Jacqueline Bevers was the Goffstown High School's Good Citizen of the Year. DAR, Daughters American Revolution, Good Citizen of the Year from Goffstown High School. And she placed 2nd in New Hampshire out of all of the students that went into that competition. And Jenna, I'm going to kill this name.
Tashida?
Tashida, thank you.
Good job.
Also was a scholarship recipient. She tied for 2nd place in the state for the DAR scholarship. And both of those girls have already won their award at a state convention. So congratulations to them for a really good job.
That's wonderful.
Two good choices.
Both of those things are really hard to manage, and the state competition is quite difficult as well. So good job, ladies.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else? Accommodations, good news? All right, seeing none, we'll go to public comment. Scott, is there anybody on the bridge line?
No, there is not.
And we have no one here. All right, so next is approving our May 3rd school board minutes. Everybody look at them, see anything?
I'll move to approve the school board minutes of May 3rd.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? By Shane. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes, for unanimous, motion passed. So now we're going to go into our presentation. We have all of our high school, or not high school, but all of our principals here to go over everything that's been going on this year. So Brian?
Yeah, I'll give a very brief introduction and then I'll hand it off to Mrs. Berry. So first of all, I'd like to, let me just point out who's in the room, and for those at home watching who might not be able to see the full room, in addition to Assistant Superintendent Berry, we have Dr. Athena Chisholm, who is our multi-purpose research extraordinaire, brilliant staff member. She has a business card that says that as well. Mr. Farley from Goffstown High School, the curriculum coordinator. Mrs. Pishka, the principal of Maple Ave. Mrs. Stoyle, the principal of Glen Lake. Mrs. Kohler, the principal of Mountain View Middle School. And Mrs. St. Gelais, principal of Bartlett. And Mr. Hamill, hidden over in the corner. Thank you for pointing him out. I would have missed him, who is the curriculum coordinator at Mountain View. So this tonight, what you're going to be hearing is a very in-depth look at a fairly simple question. And Mrs. Berry took the lead on this many months ago. I asked her what feels like a long time ago to think about a presentation in May, that is this evening, answering the question, how are our students doing and how do we know? There's been a lot of talk about kids regressing during the pandemic. There's been a lot of talk about mental health challenges in individuals, including students. And we wanted to have a more global look at answering that question. So Mrs. Berry has been hard at work. She has assembled a great team who's with her this evening. They've all taken individual parts to compile this detailed presentation. This may be a little longer than the board might have anticipated, but I thought that arguably this could be some of the most important information that you're presented all year. We've been so busy with logistics associated with the pandemic that we haven't had nearly enough time to talk about teaching and learning. So tonight's the night. So with that, Mrs. Berry, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you so much for welcoming us this evening. We're really excited to be here. I would also like to say that the team that sits in front of you is not the entire team. We've had many others who have been involved in data diving, both qualitatively and quantitatively. So it's been a big group that has contributed to this. As a matter of fact, the entire educational community has contributed, and we'd like to share our gratitude, not only to the board, for all that you do, for listening to us, for pushing us, for working with us, and for your continued support. I also want to speak and give some gratitude to the administrative team, the entire SAU administrative team. Since March 13th of 2020, without exception, this team has met on a weekly basis in some configuration. Sometimes we were all together. Sometimes it was principals with special ed facilitators, sometimes principals with curriculum coordinators, sometimes it was principals. But without exception, your principals have been at the table on a weekly basis, even throughout the summer, since March 13th, 2020. Why might I mention that? Because we are unified. We've been together. We've had the same conversations. I believe that you will see that in this evening's presentation. We would like to thank the union, both GESS and GEA, for supporting this project that we embarked on. We would like to also acknowledge our teachers. As you know, last week was Teacher Appreciation Week. One of the things our teachers wanted to make sure loud and clear that we shared with you is their gratitude for their students, for the kids who have shown up from day one, who have given their best, even when their best wasn't necessarily what we would qualify as their best. They showed up, they came, and they tried. The other thing that we want to make sure that we share for those that are listening is our appreciation to our parents. I know this has not been easy. It's been difficult, but you've shown up, and sometimes the best thing that you could do on a given day was to make sure that your child was in front of a screen, that they were ready to go. And we thank you so much for your partnership. This truly has been a community effort. So what will you see tonight? you will see universal level of data. It is not disaggregated by subgroups. We looked at the whole to begin with. The data is preliminary. It is qualitative and quantitative in nature. You will see that we will compare our performance against and within our own data over time. We're working hard not to make significant judgments or draw hard conclusions. We're continuing to learn more every day about the experience of our students, both social, emotionally, and academically. Large-scale assessments are not finished. We don't know how we compare to the state for these assessments at this time or to other districts. I want to put out a little bit of a disclaimer. You're going to hear this evening our story. It's an honest story, but it's also a story of hope. But the disclaimer is we know that there are still some kids who are struggling. We know some parents are struggling. We're not dismissive of that in any way. Please, if you are that parent or that student, reach out to administration. Reach out to your counselor. There is support. We are here. So at this point, we're going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Chisholm, who's going to begin to help us answer the question, how are our students doing and how do we know? Brian, would you be kind enough to flip that switch that shuts the lights off over the screen, please? Thank you. Okay, Athena.
Thank you. Happy to be here again. For this presentation, I'll be speaking to what I found in a literature review to answer these three questions. What does the literature tell us about the impact of the pandemic on student academic achievement and social emotional learning? What advancements and gains have students made that are outside of what we would expect from the brick and mortar experience? And what does the literature tell us about how schools should move forward to address student learning needs and to accelerate COVID-19 learning gains? I'll share with you what I was able to find with the understanding that all of these resources caution that the full impact of this pandemic is still very much being studied. I'll begin with question number one. What does the literature tell us about the impact of the pandemic on student academic achievement and social emotional learning? We'll start by looking at available data from 3 large-scale national assessments to see what they found, what comparisons are being drawn, if any, between assessments given this year and in previous years. And it's important to note, however, that many students are missing from this data set as they didn't test in the same numbers as they have in previous years. We'll hear from the student perspectives that comes from some recent student surveys. So let's go ahead and start with NWEA. It's estimated that 1 in 4 students nationally didn't participate this year in NWEA as they have in the past, so the data isn't as robust as in previous years. The NWEA assessment was given both remotely and in person to 4.4 million students. While initially there was some concern over remote administration, it was determined that assessment results didn't vary significantly from in-person testing to those who completed it remotely. And here were their overall findings. The majority of students showed growth in reading and math achievement since the outset of COVID-19, but growth patterns in math were lower. Students in grades 3 through 8 performed similarly in reading to same grade students in the fall of 2019 and better than projected. Students scored 5 to 10 percentile points lower in math. Gains in math were lower in the fall of 2020 than in prior years, and there were some differences by racial and ethnic groups are emerging, but still incomplete. So we'll go on to STAR Renaissance Learning. This is STAR Early Literacy, STAR Reading, and STAR Math. STAR data was only used when they were comparing students who tested both in 2019 and 2020. Based on their data, students began this school year academically behind where they would have been expected to perform. They found a small negative impact on achievement and growth in reading. At many grade levels, students were performing close to expectations, but in others estimated to be up to 7 weeks behind. In math, they found moderate negative effect on math achievement and growth. All grades showed students performing behind expectations, with some grades 12 weeks or more behind, and subgroups were more negatively impacted. iReady is reporting their data on only those who took the assessment in school, and here are their key findings. Unfinished learning is greater this winter than in previous years. There were greater differences from winter testing compared to previous years, especially in the early elementary grades. Greater differences in reading, particularly in grades 1 through 3. Greater differences in math in grades 1 through 6. Greater differences for schools serving the majority of Black and Latino students, and greater differences in schools located in lower income areas. They also note that it's too early to tell if students are catching up from starting behind this fall. So it's pretty clear COVID-19 has had an impact on student achievement. It appears so far on math more than reading, in earlier grades more so than later grades, with impacts to some subgroups greater than others. So with that, we're going to shift from academic data to more social emotional considerations. What did the students have to say about their own learning? The slides and graphs that come next are directly from the studies and the briefs that they were presented in. The good news is that this past fall, students reported that they were learning more in the fall than last spring at the start of the pandemic. Results varied only slightly by their learning model. That was good news. In a survey called Challenge Success, Kids Under Pressure, students were asked, compared to the time before the coronavirus impacted your community, to what extent have your experiences in the following areas changed? 34% responded that meeting parents' and guardians' expectations had increased. 46% of students felt an increase in pressure to do well in school. A little over 56% of students responded that stress related to school had increased. And almost 60% of students reported worries about college had also increased. Regarding student engagement, nearly 41% reported a decrease in effort in school, 42% reported a decrease in engagement in learning. However, nearly 51% reported spending more time on schoolwork. So students seem to be spending more time while making less effort and less engaged in learning. In a Youth Truth survey where 50% of students felt impacted by the pandemic, the number one obstacle to virtual learning for them was feeling stressed, depressed, and anxious. Students reported an appreciation of teacher support, encouragement, and care, and the academic challenges they were provided. Students appreciated a flexible schedule and more opportunities for time with families. Students had difficulty finding schoolwork relevant and virtual learning challenging to their mental health. Access to the internet or devices, distractions at home, motivation, and engagement were listed as challenges also. So with that piece, we'll go on to question number 2. What advancements or gains have students made that are outside of what we would expect from the brick and mortar experience? Some of the positives from the pandemic. Improved student agency. Students learned how to learn with more independence, not always under the watchful eye of the teacher. And that was from upper elementary and high school students who were surveyed. Parents as partners. When parents are involved, children benefit. Community support has increased, and the potential of technology in learning. The results of 6 case studies of hybrid learning found that discipline rates were sharply lower. The emphasis on social emotional learning had positive benefits. The connection with multilingual families improved, and teachers found creative ways to engage quieter students. In our observation, in the past, if families could not be physically present, they couldn't be present at all. However, with technology, families everywhere can be a part of the learning of the children in their families. On to research question number 3. What does the literature tell us about how schools should move forward to address student learning needs to accelerate COVID-19 learning gains? Something to consider. The best thing educators can do right now is to gather as much information as possible about what students have experienced over the past year, their learning, their worries, and their ideas, and take that data seriously and build on it as we return to in-person learning. Many sources have contributed to the ideas that I'll share with you next, and I've listed some of the big ideas that I found in multiple sources. We know students have unfinished learning. They've had major disruptions in their lives. Their learning has been interrupted, but not always as significantly as we anticipated. We need to support students on their continuum to success and their continuum of finishing. We also know that students have had many experiences, and thankfully not all of them negative. Moving forward, we know it will take more than business as usual during the summer and the coming academic year. The academic future of our nation's children are depending on it. Our children are depending on it. We need to foster strong relationships with our students and address their academic and social emotional needs. We need to meet students where they are and offer instruction that makes sense, and we can use technology to help. We need to focus on acceleration to move forward with high-quality curriculum that matters. The acceleration imperative at the Fordham Institute had these recommendations for elementary schools. Provide extra time, learning time, tutoring, and/or mental health supports where and when needed. That extra help should complement, not replace, students' core programs, high-quality curricula, and positive school cultures. Focus on acceleration of learning. All students should have access to high-quality curriculum in all areas, and use research to guide decisions. And finally, recognizing that next year may need to be different. Several sources mentioned these things, in particular ERS, educational resource strategies. Differentiate instruction to meet individual needs. Give time and attention to those that need it most. Support teachers to deliver high-quality instruction. Continue to build and cultivate strong relationships and provide social and emotional support. And continue our relationships with families. And that is what I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions?
Should I
Do you have a
wait till
question?
later? Should I wait till later?
No, go ahead, do it now.
I don't know if this is appropriate now or later, but
Okay.
can you give us, what can the school board do to help support our teachers as we're going into the post-COVID school setting? What do they need from us? How can we support them as a board? So,
One thing I might ask, MC, can you go back?
Oh, there's the curtain. Wait
Go
a
back.
minute. It's coming. There you go.
Go back again, please.
Yep.
This right here captures our approach. So what you're hearing tonight is the state of the state. What you'll hear at subsequent board meetings is now what. So this is the what. We will move into the now what. So part of what you'll see for this summer, for next school year, are some of these big ideas right here. Use research to guide decisions. The fact that we're sitting here this evening using a research-based approach, this is precisely what we're doing and why. You will hear about structured tutoring programs. You'll hear about instructional approaches. You're going to hear about enrichment. So these are the kinds of things that we plan to do next year. What can the board do? Part of the presentation will leave us, again, with that where do we go from here sense. One of the things that you're going to hear, there are a couple of positions that we will be asking for. The majority of them will be funded by our ESSER CARES federal grant money. So you're going to hear some positions that we're recommending. You're also going to hear a recommendation for repurposing of a couple of positions. So we are strategically and very intentionally increasing the level of support so that we can achieve these things in the classroom next year. This is not easy for teachers. Teachers are going to need high-quality professional development. They're going to need time to collaborate. They're going to need ongoing coaching and support. All of the things that we've been doing for years and years and years. So I think your question is a good one, and tonight is just the state of the state. Our next presentation at your next meeting will have our recommendations for our comprehensive remediation and enrichment. as well as some increased positions that we're asking for.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
I had another one unless somebody else is.
Go ahead, Jared.
I'll just ask a follow-up of that. So Brian, I know that this might be something that we will talk about at our next meeting, but I guess it's never too late to start early. So the question I would have is, knowing that there might be some opportunities for students to try to catch up, are we looking at providing summer education to students that do not have IEPs and have that covered through our regular funding sources?
We do. I will share, though, this is a challenge for us because we have had significant limitations in our ability to staff positions. So from a belief perspective, we want to have an enrichment opportunity that would include opportunities for kids at no cost to them for purely enrichment. However, I think our ability to do that is going to be perhaps a little more limited than we'd like. But yes, we're going to have opportunities for kids and for families.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Go ahead, Ellen, you have one more
Just,
question?
one other one. This data and information is generic. It's like across the country where some
Right.
institute did studies.
Right.
Are
And-
we looking at, I don't even know if it's feasible to do, getting that type of data for our district? I don't even know if it's possible to do because.
It's not yet. So, in fact, I was out in the schools today. They're still doing the state assessment. So we have not finished and certainly don't have data back yet. So at the beginning, MC talked about that we aren't doing that district to state comparison
Right.
yet because that data is not available. As soon as it is, we will continue that analysis.
Because I was thinking our children's academic levels, for whichever way we want to, and the social emotional part of it with the anxiety and all that kind of thing, so that we potentially, if we can get that kind of information from our kids, can more focused address that as we develop next year or this summer's programs.
Ellen, the schools are each going to present next, and they're going to present on how their students are doing, how they know, and what they plan to do next.
Thank you very much.
So it's coming.
And it's also, as MC said at the beginning, it will be a combination of quantitative as well as qualitative information. We didn't want to increase the importance of just quantitative data.
Right.
Sometimes as educators, we want to see show me the hard numbers.
Right.
Now is a time that the soft skills are more important than ever. So you'll see from each of the principals and the administrators a greater in-depth look at those questions at the school level.
Thank you very much.
And Ellen, too, I would like to go back. I would like to caution you guys from really drawing a lot of judgments and conclusions. We've done a lot of work. We do know a lot about our kids. We're not necessarily sure right now what that means because we don't have the comparative base
Right.
to do that.
Right.
So we're putting out, as I said, preliminary data and information. So are we good with Dr. Chisholm?
I think
Athena,
so.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we were going to give you a little bit of an intermission, but we are moving along here. So, Mr. Farley, it will speak. Kevin, if you want to come up, I'm going to grab these next couple of slides.
Okay.
So your school level data, these are the two areas that will now be addressed. The social, emotional, and academic advancements and gains that students have made both within and outside of the brick and mortar experience. One of the things that we talked about at great length when looking at data is all of you can picture a report card. It's got a lot of little squares in it, right? What we know is our students learned a boatload of stuff that doesn't fit in the square. And we wanted, that fits outside the square, and we wanted to capture that information. In some cases, it's more important than what fits in the square. Things like executive functioning, tenacity, stick-to-itiveness. The kids stepped up, many of them, and those, everybody tried. You'll also hear about the plans moving forward to address student learning needs and to accelerate COVID-19 learning gains. So learning within the report card and learning outside of the report card. I'd like to start with the ELL program. We have about 37 ELL students from K to 12 that are actively receiving services. We have about 50, I think it's about 53 in all. The delta between the 37 and the 53 are those students who are on a monitoring status. So they have passed what's called the access test and continue to work with our ESL instructors to ensure that they are meeting achievement. Both Susie and Bo, who are our two ELL teachers, just have found a lot of positive gains, relationships, the ability to be on a Zoom call with parents, to read to the younger children, to have translators involved. There are many folks that can't make it into the school for whatever reason, and they just have had just tremendous success with relationship building and supporting kids. I will tell you that last year for 2020, the access test, which is the big kind of SAS test for our ELL learners, Bo and Susie completed their testing last year, just prior to the pandemic. This year, their testing is completed. They have managed to get all the remote students in, and those results will become available and communicated to families over the summer. There's always a bit of a lag time with those. Some quotes from ELL students. School was in many ways a lot less stressful for me because I got to work at my own pace. This year I like doing school from home on Mondays and Wednesdays because I got to wear my pajamas. That was a first grade Bartlett student. And this year I like doing Raz Kids on Seesaw and Zooming with my teacher, another first grade student. Okay, Mr. Farley.
All right.
So how are your students doing academically, and how do you know?
First of all, I want to kind of reiterate what MC said earlier, that some of our information, our data are just incomplete. So really what I want to show you in terms of our academics is our AP program and our science testing, which we just finished up. So you see the AP data here, I gave a couple of years, and I want to talk a little bit about very, very steady growth. I'm showing participation, which is basically how many kids took one or more tests. And then I also want to show the number of tests because kids take multiple tests. And finally, the pass rate. And you'll see as you go from left to right, from 2018 to 2021, you'll see consistent gains in participation. More and more and more kids are taking one or more AP course and exam. And I'll have to say, I was not expecting such a jump for this year after the end of the year last year. And you can also see that they're taking more exams. So the growth in the kids taking 2, 3, and more exams is growing quickly. And again, this year, it's just remarkable. And our pass rates are also increasing. You'll see that last year we had a 75% pass rate. We don't have those scores in yet. We're in the midst of it right now. But you should note that that 75% pass rate, that was the first time any kid has ever had a digital AP exam, and it was sprung on them at a very late time of the year, and we made gains. So I'm pretty happy about that.
And that was because of the pandemic?
Yes, it was the end of the year when we were sent home.
Yep.
These are our science scores. The SAS science test the 11th grade students take. And what I have here is pretty much all the years that the test has been given. And I'm showing comparisons between GHS and New Hampshire with each of the 4 proficiency levels. And you'll see that in 2019-2020, that during the pandemic, that test wasn't even given. 2017-2018 was when it was first given, it was first piloted. And those scores are a little bit arbitrary because they had not normed the test yet. But anyway, what you can see, we're consistently outperforming New Hampshire at Goffstown here. And you'll see as the years go by, our proficiency levels, we are getting more and more kids proficient. And if you look at the numbers of below proficiency, you'll see those are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But I think some pretty big numbers. And now I want to talk a little bit more about how we have adapted as a school and how we are supporting our kids and how we are keeping our school running as a place where kids are supported, where the climate is a good climate, and we're keeping kids engaged in the program. Just a few areas here. So our student council and our other student organizations have definitely had to adapt. Big things like our homecoming week and those kind of things. So this is what I want to say here is that they have adapted. The kids have continued to work together. They've come up with creative problem-solving techniques to kind of, like for example, we used to have the Veterans Assembly. This year they wrote letters to the veterans. So these are a number of things that group has done. They continue to do the work that they have done in the past, just a little bit more creatively. Performing arts is a really good example. The first thing they did was they found ways to be able to perform, to play instruments and to sing in a safe way. So they immediately went out and consulted with UNH, and they developed protocols, and they got new PPE, and they continue to practice. They did some practicing outside. They did it in separate rooms, and then they're performing. So they did some virtual performances. They've done some live performances, socially distanced with fewer numbers. And I believe that Caleb, you mentioned the dance gala that's going on, and that's an example of that. The technology piece is kind of interesting. In the past, we have a library with computers that kids can come in and use, or full carts of 20 that teachers can take to the classroom. We've changed things up that way. First, 160 kids got a device for home. Any kid, whether hybrid or remote, we were able to provide 162 devices to kids so that they could continue to participate in a virtual or a hybrid learning environment. The other thing we did is we kind of reconfigured how we loan computers off of those carts. So rather than all or none, students can stop in, pick up a cart or a single laptop for a period, for a day, and bring it back. And teachers can come in and only borrow the number of computers they needed for a class. So our classes were generally 10 to 12 kids during the hybrid model, so we didn't need to loan out the full 20 computer cart. So we made that work very well. Another thing I want to talk a little bit about is that the digital skills that teachers have learned and done, I think we take for granted. We had 2 weeks' time last year for our teachers to develop a whole digital platform. That means creating materials, learning the platform, grading, communicating, and they did it, and they did it really well. And I think that we need to recognize that. We take it for granted that Google Classroom is something that everybody knows. So I think that's a real success. These are just kind of some procedural and logistical things around the school. So lunches, how do we put all of our kids in a lunchroom together? Well, we realized we couldn't do that. We came up with a different way to do lunch. Kids have more spaces, outdoor spaces, and that seems to work very, very well for us. And we're continuing with other things, for example, awards night, scholarship night, prom, graduation. We've found creative ways to make those things still happen, so kids still feel like they are getting the high school experience, even though they might not be actually in the building. Our online academy is something to talk about. We've really done a nice job for those kids that just stayed home, and we've provided all kinds of supports. We've provided a digital platform for them to work on. There's lots of communications. We have Amanda Murchison, who has been heading that up. We've provided a lot of help for executive functioning. And, earlier Athena had talked about how kids are better working independently without their teacher. We are seeing that with the supports that we're providing to the online academy. Justin?
Sports.
Sports. Is that Justin or?
No, that's you.
I'm sorry.
This is just a slide. I did ask Justin to contribute a slide that just shared participation in sports, due to the pandemic. And I think you can see that we are certainly up from 2020, 2021. Things are growing, kids are out there, and we thank again the board for your support. You know, you've seen the presentations, so numbers are coming up, kids are happy, they're out there, so we thank you for that. Okay, Kevin, how are your kids doing socially and emotionally, and how do you know?
This, I think, is really remarkable what the guidance counseling office has been able to do. They continue to provide all of the services that they have been able to provide before the pandemic. And as with teachers, they came up with digital technological solutions. Not only that, they've increased, they're using different tools, for example, for scheduling. They've created virtual resources, virtual office hours. There's a counseling corner. And what they're finding here is that they're communicating better with parents. Parents have a better chance to participate because they don't necessarily have to leave work, or they don't have to leave kids at home to come to meetings. They're also finding that teachers who may not be able to be in the building for an after-school meeting, they can attend virtually. So their services have not been impacted, they've just been adapted a little bit. Looking at this one here, I think you'll see that a lot of the same positive outcomes as you will have seen for classroom teachers. There's a better accessibility for kids, there's better supports for kids, there's better accessibility for parents. They found creative technological solutions to meet the challenges, and the supports and the services that we provide to kids has not been impacted. We continue to be able to do it. Okay, here are some, I guess these would be the counseling equivalents to our academic outcomes. We're getting our National Merit Scholars. We're getting our kids into very, very good universities, and I'm going to take a second to have you take a look at what some of those are.
This is a sample of just some in each of the schools, counselors put together bulletin boards. This lives right outside of the GTV hallway. I happened to see it one day when I walked by, and I thought, along with the grizzly buzz that comes out and several other things, there have been a lot of things promoted. If you're feeling this way, where can you go for help? How can we support you? What can we do for you? So we share this as an example of a bulletin board found at Goffstown High School. And where are you going to go from here, Kevin?
Okay, so these are some things that we did talk about earlier that are not only effective, useful, or positive in a pandemic or a digital or a hybrid environment, but they're things that we found were just good practices in general, and we'd like to explore ways to continue using them. So as I said earlier, that the technological solutions, particularly in counseling and in instruction, we'd like to think about ways that we can keep some of those platforms and the communication through technology. I said earlier when we talked a little bit about the online academy that students were learning greater independence. Are there ways to take those techniques that we use through online academy and see how they work for all kids to make them their executive functioning stronger and make them more independent? Our teachers have put hours on end creating good video and digital instructional materials where kids, again, working independently, they're not the worksheet that they have to do, they're something they have to watch in order to learn, they're instructional materials. How can we keep those? What value are those for snow days or if a student is absent? The access to our computers where kids can on a walk-in or drop-in pick up a computer for a period or 2 periods, a laptop, is something really worth exploring if it's feasible to continue doing that with larger class sizes. And the other thing kids really do like, especially in this time of the year, is when they can sit out on those beautiful tables in the sun and have their lunch together, or they can sit on some of the benches in the building and not be cooped up in the cafeteria. And you know what? They were clean, they were well-behaved, kids were using the classrooms, they were eating with people that they wanted to eat with and teachers that they wanted to eat with. So this lunch space procedure here, we're looking to continue to explore.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're very welcome.
Any questions for Kevin?
Go ahead, Shane.
So it's good to see that AP testing is up, and I know last year they were forced to do digitally. Do you have a sense this year, did most students stay digital, or did many opt to come back to paper pencil?
It's a completely mixed bag.
Okay.
They're offered a paper and pencil, they're offered an in-school digital, and they're offered an at-home digital.
Right.
And part of the difference, though, is that the digital ones are later. So some teachers chose with their students to do digital in order to get an extra couple of weeks of instruction time in. Some teachers had their students choose, so I might have had 15 in the first week doing paper and 10 or 15 this week doing digital. So it was based on student choice. And some, like our calc folks, really thought it's best to do that on paper rather than digital, to do a calculus exam, for example. So again, teachers and students made the choices. Some did paper, so it's a split pretty evenly.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Go ahead, Ellen.
Just real quick, I want to thank you very much for answering my questions before I asked them. That's great.
Thank you, Ellen.
Anyone else? Jared?
Under your accommodation slide, I know that we list out the college acceptance. Do we have a sense of scholarships? Has scholarship for academics or scholarship for sports increased or decreased for our college-bound seniors during our pandemic? And do we have any kind of data around that?
You know something, I'm afraid I'm not a good person to answer that. Joyce has been the one that worked with me for this particular slide around the counseling services. I don't think I can give you a good answer, but you know what, I can bring that to Joyce and we can communicate that, I'm sure, at some other time.
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Anyone else? No? All right.
Thank you.
you for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Proud of you. How you guys going to do this, Miss Wendy, so we can get...
I'm going to sit here, and I'll just come up.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's perfect.
Good evening. We'll welcome Mr. Hamill, Mountain View Middle School Curriculum Coordinator, to the microphone, and we've got Ms. Kohler right behind him here. So Lyle, how are your students doing academically, and how do you know?
Good evening. The first thing that we decided to look at was the New Hampshire statewide assessment interims, which were given in the fall. With the cancellation of the spring summatives last year, we conducted the interim assessments early on this year. As you can see, the interim ELA, we have 61% proficient or above, math 52 proficient or above. This slide represents our current New Hampshire SAS summative testing in progress. As you can see with the disclaimer, it's preliminary and unfinalized, and these particular numbers I accessed last week. Currently, 65% proficient or above in ELA, and 40% proficient or above in mathematics. This represents some historical data for our SAS summative assessments, including the 2021 exams currently in progress. As you can see, there's consistency with the English language arts assessment through the years. And in the math assessment, you'll notice in this current year, there's a slight dip, which was referenced by Dr. Chisholm during her lit review as a national occurrence. You can also see the science scores in progress, which are fairly remaining constant with previous years. This slide represents data from our oral reading fluency assessment, which is administered to grade 5 and 6 students in units of words read correctly per minute, as well as data from writing assessments administered by our grade 7 and grade 8 teachers with whom I spoke and then provided data. So you can have a look at how our local assessments are going. This slide shows data from local assessments tied to our core mathematics programming, everyday math in grade 5, and big ideas math in grades 6 through 8. So I'll give you another second to look at that as well.
If you had to make an observation about that data, Lyle, what would you say?
I would say, according to our local assessments, there does not seem to be as much fluctuation this year to last year. They seem to be fairly consistent, referencing student achievement for our particular assessments that we gave.
And this is year to year as opposed to cohort to cohort.
That is correct. These represent different groups of students. Last year's grade 5 students versus this year grade 5 students, and so on.
So as we move forward, once we get some finalized scores on these things, another thing that we will do is mine the data down to the cohort level and compare groups of students as they move through.
In winter of this school year, we adopted a typing.com keyboarding fluency program in grades 5 and 6. And you can see already preliminarily there is some growth with keyboarding fluency with an increase of typed words correct per minute at both grade levels.
Would you share some qualitative observations from teachers who were proctoring SAS, what they have noticed about, there's a smile,
Yeah.
what they've noticed about students' ability to keyboard during the test this year?
Absolutely. Speaking with some ELA teachers, they were discussing in grade 5 that it would sometimes take an entire 90-minute period for a student to type a couple paragraphs, just using the two-finger method. Not slow because of trying to come up with what to say, but literally just conveying it on the computer. And they're noticing that that's no longer being a limiting factor for students being able to construct writing on a keyboard.
And it's our intent to continue with this program.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, we don't want to test our students' ability or inability, right, to keyboard. We want to know content. So Lyle, how are our students doing emotionally, and how do we know?
Okay, on this slide, we represent a lot of the characteristics that continued throughout connected learning, through hybrid learning, and now through our fully in-person instruction. Throughout all of this, we continued our monthly PBIS character building trait rollouts. Each month, there was signage around the school in every classroom, and the same themes as last year were continued through this year. Like the high school, as we heard from Mr. Farley, our spirit activities, including Spirit Week and dress-up days, continued, as well as a virtual talent show and other community-building activities. Our school counselors prepared Second Step Lessons, which is our SEL learning platform, enrolled them out on Fridays during hybrid and remote learning. And the Second Step program also offered specific lessons tailored for remote learning as well as for school re-entry situations for students. Some qualitative information as well was that families found it easier to attend in more convenient 504 meetings and other meetings with teachers through the Zoom platform, as opposed to having to come in the building and potentially miss more work. Counselors were able to connect with students more frequently, conducting those personal SEL check-ins to see how our kids are doing. In grade 8 in particular, Second Step SEL lessons were embedded within the curriculum to provide more context for social emotional learning. When student emails were rolled out to our students that further increased the way for formal communication to occur between teachers and students outside of the traditional school day. And as we also heard, the use of technology among all staff members, general ed teachers, special ed teachers, paraprofessionals, school counselors, and everyone among students also increased. We also had our school counselors in class offering presentations. For example, in grade 5 and 6, these were focusing on self-care practices. Physical books and ebooks were purchased to focus on topics of we can do hard things in grade 5 and to think positive in 6. The smaller class sizes help facilitate these types of conversations during hybrid learning. And there were also benefits to students because of more opportunities for individualized and differentiated instruction, as well as the tutoring program, which really took off this year across all grade levels for students who needed it.
If I'm not mistaken, you also implemented over, perhaps even last March, a struggling student form. Was that the name of the form where classroom teachers could refer a student to a counselor to get support or for a check-in?
Sure. We developed a reluctant learner form,
Yep.
which teachers could fill out with specific concerns about accessibility, work completion. It was brought into the conversation school counselors, if needed case managers, as well as administration. So that way we could keep track on our radar of any kids who seem to be needing more attention or support.
Thank you.
This is a picture of a self-care bulletin board in our grade 5 and 6 hallway, which ties into the in-class presentations that our counselors were giving to students.
And where are you going from here?
For Mountain View, we're looking to continue our collaborative conversations within and among grade level departments in order to identify the most critical instruction and refocus our content priorities. We are going to be promoting acceleration for unfinished learning, focusing on concepts and skills which are necessary, the must-dos versus the would be nice to have sort of content questions. Continuing also with our remediation for those students who do need to work on some past concepts and skills in order to be brought back up. We're going to be maintaining grade level instruction, continuing to use regular formative and summative assessments to inform instruction, continuing to help our kids keep up and not just focus on catching up. This falls in line also with the acceleration imperative as outlined by the Fordham Institute, which Dr. Chisholm and Superintendent Balke referenced before the individual school presentations. We're going to keep our keyboarding fluency program strong with our typing.com program. And we're also happy in multiple grades to have the IXL adaptive learning, diagnostic, and analytical software in order to have that adaptive instructional and assessment program for our students. We're also going to continue to keep our focus on future-ready skills, social emotional learning for all of our students and staff members, focusing especially on self-regulation, growth mindset, citizenship, as well as the 5 traits of social emotional learning. We found that our students have demonstrated significant achievement during all of our learning modalities, connected learning, hybrid, and now fully in person. And we continue to look forward with hope in order to celebrate them and to address unfinished learning as we continue our mission to advance student learning.
Thank you, Lyle. Questions, thoughts?
Go ahead,
I
Shane.
have a quick one.
Go ahead.
I know middle school can be a tough age. Did you guys see a spike in special ed referrals this year, or did it seem like the supports and interventions and programs you guys had in place kind of take care of a lot of that?
Wendy?
We actually didn't see a spike in what we normally get for referrals. I do think, though, that through our MTSS, it's a tiered system for
Right.
some of our students who are struggling, that we did see more students enter that. However, we were able to do more interventions as a team, so some of those students didn't go to referral because we were able to put some things in place to be able to help that student make gains and be more successful in the classroom.
That's great.
Great
So,
question.
Thank you, guys.
No problem.
I will say, though, that I do believe generically there was an uptick, which I'm sure you're both over there well aware of, that there was, in order to get support, I think there were a lot of people that went the route, parents who went the route of a referral.
Right, and that's why I asked. I know they're up everywhere, but I'm glad that the interventions and supports you guys had were kind of helpful in catching that, so it's great.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Just to follow up, and then I have one question. Those interventions and supports were, I'm assuming, primarily done through the technology with communication at home and things like that? Or did the use of that technology help meet those children's needs maybe quicker or better than if everybody had been in the building at one time? Just wondering.
So Ellen, it was a little bit of both, to be honest with you. Some of it we did use technology to be able to help students with different programs.
Yeah.
Others was done either in the building during our ACE time that we have scheduled during the day, or after school in tutoring or before school for tutoring as well. So to be honest with you, it was a multitude of things that we used to be able to help students in their family situations.
Okay.
We did have some students that were fully remote and are still fully remote that needed some extra interventions. So of course we were able to meet those family needs and continue to do things via Zoom and other methodologies to be able to help them.
Thank you. And then my other question is, with the way we've done with hybrid and half the kids in, half the time kind of thing, did you see any change in behaviors, student behaviors in the building? Did they improve? Did they get worse, or what?
So I think when we moved to the hybrid model, we actually saw a decrease in what we saw before the pandemic. Of course, when you have 6 feet of social distancing, when you have a lot fewer kids in the classroom, you're able to give a lot more of that individualized attention. Of course, when you're bringing a lot of students in, when we went to 5 days a week, closer proximity, that 3 feet of social distancing, and to be honest with you, getting used to being back in school again, we did see a small uptick in behaviors. However, I think that our staff has done a phenomenal job of making sure that they give kids breaks, mask breaks during the day. We're outside, even though only our 5th and 6th graders have recess. Right now, our 7th and 8th graders are outside as well. So we've done some things on our own to try to help with some of those behaviors. And I honestly think that as we continue to head towards June, that students are going to kind of find their comfort zone again of being in the classroom. Because it is different. When you go from having 12 students in a room and all of a sudden there's 20 of you, it feels different.
Well, it's totally different, not only for the kids, but for the teachers as well.
Absolutely.
And you said what I kind of intuitively figured what was going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Anyone else have a question for Mountain View?
Thank you.
No? Thank you, guys.
Mrs. Fishka.
Thank you.
So Mrs. Pishka, I'm going to roll video.
Hi, I'm Lauren Pruno, and I am a 4th grade teacher here at Maple Avenue. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about basically how the last year has affected me as an educator, affected me as somebody who loves children, and just somebody who's in the classroom. And although it's been very hard trying to learn this new world with remote learning, teaching via a computer screen versus in person, and everything that comes along with that, it's actually kind of been a great lesson and a blessing in a lot of ways, because I was able to get to know my kids on a level I never would have had the opportunity to had this not happened. So having a smaller class size, I was able to really relate one-on-one to students academically and personally, because I was able to take that time and get to know each student individually as opposed to all 20 or 25 students at one time. So although it was hard trying to duplicate lessons and make sure that the same messages were spread across cohorts, I really enjoyed the ability to get to know my kids on a really deep level.
Okay, Mrs. Pishka, how are your students doing academically, and how do you know?
Thank you, MC.
You're welcome. Welcome.
So just as Lyle mentioned, Mountain View participated in the SAS in the fall. It was a shorter version of the test. We gave it to our fourth grade students. They had not experienced the state test as they missed it the year before, so this was a good opportunity for them to do a practice. As you can see, for literacy, 65% of our students scored proficient or above, and 42% of our students scored proficient or above in mathematics. So you can see the pattern there. Math is definitely, for across the schools so far, mentioned not doing as well as in reading. I will add, I went back and looked at when they took the test. They had gone to school 12 days before they took that test, too. I thought that was interesting. So this is the current information. We still have our remote students taking their exams, but you can see 2017 to 2021 and ELA, our current information is below what we had scored last year, the same with math. So this is a math assessment. It's not pretty because it does not compare all grades and taking the same assessment, but this is our local assessment in mathematics. For the grades, grade 1 did do the mid-year exam. You can see they did just as well as they did last year. Grade 2, and instead of doing the mid-year, they did a Unit 4 review. Grade 3 participated in the mid-year, and grade 4 did not participate in the mid-year, and so all we have is the beginning of the year data to share on that. So here, this is the fluency assessment and comparing last year and this year. I can tell you that for mid-year grade 1, students should score between 13 and 33, so you can see our students read pretty fluently, even though they haven't been in school as many days as they had last year or in years past. Grade 2, it would be 62 to 82, and so you can see they hit right in the middle. And grade 3 and 4 were also scored high, range 61 to 81 for grade 3, and 84 to 104 in grade 4. So they did pretty well.
So, Mrs. Bishop, how are your students doing social emotionally, and how do you know?
So we've continued our lessons on problem solving and social skills, which is the second step curriculum. Fewer behavior slips, a more personal space, and the opportunity for individual attention occurred during the hybrid model, as Ellen mentioned. And our students were definitely resilient. They followed the necessary procedures in being safe. Now, I'm sure Ellen will ask me this question: did referrals increase as far as behavior when we went back to 5 days? Yes, specifically in grade 1. So 52% of our behavior referrals are first graders. And I would say in the month of April and May, we received 40 referrals. That was more than what we had between September and March. So definitely there was a change, and when we went 5 days a week and we had everyone in. So the less space for each individual, less time, attention from their teacher. So the majority of the referrals were on disruption in the classroom. So attention-seeking behavior. Yes.
They learned a ton. I think they learned a lot about perseverance and being able to problem solve, and we continue to do that with everyone back here, and we couldn't be happier. We learned a ton.
So this was a statement made by a third grade student, connected learning this year. It's been a lot less stressful. We did have a lot of connected learners when we started the year. I think we were over 90. I don't remember the exact number. But when we did, I mean, we really pushed and encouraged parents to trust us that we were doing a really nice job supporting students, making sure things were safe and that we were staying healthy. And we were ending the year with only 45 students out of our 500 and 500 plus as remaining as connected learners.
Where are you going to go from here, Mrs. Fisher?
Well, like everyone else has already mentioned, we'll focus on relationship building within the classroom community and within the school community. We will gather critical information on where students are at academically so we can move them forward. We will deliver targeted and differentiated instruction with a focus on the critical skills that bridge to new learning and understanding. And we will provide additional supports to those students who struggle in the areas of academic and social learning.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide input. First of all, the challenges were obvious. Having two different cohorts, alternating Fridays, trying to be what every child needs, what every parent needs all the time, that's obvious. But I will say there were lots of positives from those challenges. For me, the biggest positive was focusing on really important critical challenges, concepts and skills and strategies, and being able to provide practice for the kids on their home days. I found that to be very powerful. Also the relationships I built, children, getting to know them in smaller groups, that was really, really great. Thanks to
Questions for Mrs. Pishka?
Nobody? Oh, go ahead, Jared.
I'm looking back at prior slides at the Maple Ave SAS proficiency percentages in ELA and math in the next slide. I'm having a hard time understanding the call out for 2021. We say that math is at 49% without remote, but when we look at the breakdown on the next slide, it seems relatively a lot higher than 49%. I'm just trying to understand those two slides and how they correlate with each other.
Are you talking about the colorful bar graph and then the...
So on our packets, page 32.
Okay.
I don't know what that...
Hang on.
The top one's state assessment, the bottom one's local assessment.
This says Maple Ave, that's why.
Yeah.
One's SAS, one I think.
So what, can you read the title of the one you're looking at?
So both of them. So we go from 2019 to 2021. There is no 2020 in there, which I understand why. But I'm trying to understand the next slide, which is the assessments compared to 2020. And looking at the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4, those averages together seem to be a lot higher than 49%.
And those are our local assessments, the ones that you're looking at, the 2020 and 2021. And the mid-year exam occurs usually late January, early February, so we would have been able to get that in 2020. And the information you're looking above, that's the state testing.
So grades 1, 2, and 3 seem to be on par with the prior year, but really grades 4, we saw a drop off.
Well, what you're seeing in grade 4, if you look in the small print, it says beginning of year assessment. So the grade 4, we did not give the midterm, mid-year exam. So there was nothing to compare. So we just selected the beginning of year because we did give beginning of year in 2020, and we gave the beginning of the year in 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, I said that, yeah, it's not ideal. It was not for this slide.
Pandemic.
I did have some interesting information that I just wanted to briefly share. So priority return is something that we took very seriously at the elementary level, specifically in our first grade classes. We really encouraged to bring in as many students as we could, and we had 18% of the students priority return, which meant for elementary that they had 4 days or 5 days a week from the beginning, which was wonderful. And so looking at how many days of school priority return students potentially received was 150 days of their year they received. In grade 1, a typical student who was going 2 days, and then when we started doing Fridays for groups, 2 to 3 days a week, they have been in school, or will be by June 16th, 111 days. That is 63% of their year, 111 days. And then our grade 4 students who, same thing, a typical student, 2 days or 3 if they attended Fridays. And then with the 5 days a week now, 104 days. So that's 59% of their year that they were in front of their teacher. Just thought it was interesting information.
Anybody
Thank
else
you.
have any other questions for Mrs. Pishka? Oh, go ahead, Caleb.
So you had this testimony here from a connected learner who said it was less stressful. I know in the higher grade levels earlier we saw that sometimes connected learning brought more stress. Did you also see some of that at the elementary level where connected learners reported feeling more stressed about school?
So your question is?
So you had this testimony about someone who said connected learning was less stressful. Did you also find that there was a significant amount of students who felt that it was more stressful at the elementary level?
I think that parents help make those decisions based on their observations of their child. And many parents decided that if their child was not thriving in that environment, then they sent them back to school. So we had many students return to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pishka.
Thank you. Ms. Angeli, Bartlett Elementary. You have a big typo on the top of this slide.
Let's detect you all. Look at that 1,000 times.
Studenettes. How are our studenettes doing?
I think typically we're...
It's a pandemic.
It's a pandemic. We
I
looked
know.
at that a million times.
So, Miss Angeli, how are your studenettes doing?
Thank you. Our studenettes are wonderful.
Whoa,
Okay.
let me go back.
So how are they doing and how do we know? We reviewed and analyzed a lot of academic data, including the SAS scores, NEWA scores, Wonders local assessments for Wonders and Everyday Math, as everyone else has mentioned. A lot of anecdotal findings on decoding, reading, fluency, writing, and math trends across the grade levels. We really we have the advantage of being a very small school, and we have a lot of observers in our school that can sit and take notes and just collaborate together to make sure we're understanding what our kids know and what they need to learn. Collaborating with families was huge for us and discussing the students' academic levels, strengths, and weaknesses. It was really interesting at progress report time and report card time because a lot of the students went last year from March to June were with their families. So their families had a really good understanding of where their students were if they were participating with them online. So that was very informative for the parents, and it brought our families closer together with the teachers. So that was good. And anecdotal findings on 21st century skills. I have a quote from one of our first grade teachers this year that said, "Our kids are thinkers. They are problem solvers. They've grown up a lot, and I think what they might have lacked in specific instruction that they might get in the regular classroom, they made up for in problem solving and 21st century skills. And we've made up a lot of ground. So the same thing with the grade 4 SAS distribution for BES. So we have, it was 28 and 26% that were proficient or above it's tricky on this slide, so that is in ELA. Math, we did fare worse. We had 22 and 13% that were scored in proficient or above. So that did go along with the national trends for us with the math as well. SAS proficiency and percentages in ELA and math. You can see that overall the graph goes up to 58, 55, 49, and 41. So we did have a drop off in ELA. And math, we had a pretty significant drop in math. We have seen through our scores and through what our students are doing that they're picking up a lot by being in class. I do think that a lot of it is the students, when they're younger, they haven't learned those basic skills yet, and they missed out on a lot of those. So, but they are catching up a lot more in school. So we have a ways to go. So these are for our local assessments. So grade 1, 82 to 87. So our math teachers, our first grade math teachers were very animated. I think a lot of the parents loved the videos and things like that. So that was a good surprise there. Grade 2 from 91 to 80. Grade 3, 65 to 77, and grade 4, 91. And they did not take it in 4th grade. It's tricky to compare because we have such a small sample of students in grade 1, so we have in grade 2 to grade 3 from the previous year. So it's kind of tricky, but it does follow the national trends. The fluency assessments, I saw that in grade 1, fluency did go down. I saw the same results at Maple Ave as well. Grade 2, it went down more than it did at Maple Ave. In grade 3, there wasn't much of a difference, and grade 4 actually went up. So our 1st and 2nd graders took the biggest hit.
Which is also in line with some of the data that Athena shared earlier, that we know that it is the youngest learners.
Yes.
That need their teacher in front of them.
Yes. And some quotes from parents are that they love their children and they enjoyed working with them, but they are not their teachers. And we even had teachers that said the same thing. Our teachers that have children said that their children learn better from going to school. So that is a testament for that. This was a bulletin board that one of our 4th graders did.
There you go.
Oops, sorry. Students, and what did you learn this year? And they all made little decorations of what they did learn, and they were very varied. One of them was, this year I learned how to use Seesaw and other online resources. That was one of the grade 4 students. But they all learned something different, and they shared it. And I really feel like they were a big community. They have a lot of shared experiences, and it was nice to see them talking in small groups when they had 10 to 12 students, and then when they came back, and there was 20 students in a classroom, they were able to carry over that small group feel and communicate with the other peers, and they were just very excited to be together, and they really listened to each other even more than they did before. So that's positive. All right, Shelley Gordon, who's a Connected Learning teacher.
Hello, my name is Shelley Gordon. I am the 3rd grade Connected Learning teacher this school year. I have been asked to go over some of the positives we have seen with remote learning. Another thing we do is a check-in. We do zones of regulation, so they pick their color zone and then they explain why they are in that color. Again, this is not forced, so if they choose not to answer, that is fine. Sometimes, because the chat is just private between me and the students, sometimes they will choose to answer in the chat and just not out loud. Some of the learning benefits I have noticed from remote learning is that longer breaks throughout the day really help them focus when it is learning time. Seesaw assignments, they are allowed to work at their own pace. So if they are a child that finishes quickly, they finish quickly. If they are a child that takes longer, well, the other students are not going to know they take longer, or they're not going to have to clean up and move on because they have additional time to finish those assignments. I've also noticed from a student perspective and a teacher's perspective that the small one-on-one groups or small groups on Zoom for reading and math have been really beneficial. The distractions are at a minimum, so it really allows the full extent of time to be geared towards learning. I asked my third graders what they felt the positives were of remote learning, and these are some of the things that they said. And one of my favorites, even if you are on the computer, you can still learn. So I think it's important to end with that. I know that this year was crazy for everyone. It was a new experience for everyone, but whether you're in the building or on the computer, you can still learn.
I've been here for probably 20 plus years, and I really enjoyed it. So your caseload of kiddos was reduced a little, reduced obviously and therefore the size of the Title I group was also reduced, which meant I was working more specifically on individualized goals for kids, and that was a really positive thing because the student scores started to accelerate the other thing I did notice, which was really positive, and absolutely no
Thank you. And as you can tell, we edited those slides down, those videos. Our teachers are very overachieving, and they had 6-minute videos, so we pared them down quite a bit. But they had some great experiences. That the Title I teacher was a good example of how we changed things around so that it fit the student needs. When we were in the hybrid model, our Title I teachers and some of our special ed teachers were able to work with the students on their at-home day. So they still had their lessons during the day when they were in school, and it wasn't taking away from that. So that was a positive from the hybrid model.
And how are your students doing social emotionally, and how do you know?
Good. I think that they're doing pretty well. We did the same as the other schools. We provided second step lessons through Seesaw when they were home. That was really critical last year, especially between March and June. And then when they came back, we continued to provide those lessons to them and reinforce them within the school. The students can watch the lessons over and over on Seesaw, and a lot of them really did. A lot of them would get back to our guidance counselor and explain how they had a problem or how they solved it. And they still, it's so cute, they actually try to model for other students. And a teacher the other day said, they were having a hard time with their Promethean board and they were trying to plug it in. And one of the students says, when that happens, when I get frustrated, I take some deep breaths. So they are advocating for everyone. Families were able to follow through with academic and social skills at home. I think a lot of these families, to see how we teach these social skills and how we teach future-ready skills and executive functioning, was very helpful for them. And we got that feedback from parents. To actually see teachers doing this with their students was very powerful and was able to help them. One of the quotes is, in the past, I had a hard time teaching the student to read, but on Zoom, I was able to see how you teach reading and then do the same thing when we read a book together. And that's a third grade student at Bartlett. There were fewer behaviors. Really, there were no behaviors between when we came back till March. I don't think I had a single PBIS write-up. We actually had realized when we got one in March that we hadn't even chosen anyone to enter them into the computer yet. And so far, we've only had 2 real behaviors. So, and they're very minor. So I think what happened is the students are getting the attention that they needed. There was a lot of support. There was extra paraprofessionals sort of in the building, because the para might be with somebody on Monday, Wednesday, even though it's a one-on-one, and a different student on Tuesday, Thursday, while they supported students at home as well. So there was just a lot more individualized attention. We did a lot of work, social, emotional, in executive functioning and prepping students for when we all came back in. And I appreciate the staggered approach of coming back first grade and then second grade. The whole school was able to get ready for the first grade when they came back. We were able to have half of the group eat in the cafeteria, like the group A would eat in the cafeteria with very few students, then group B did. We did that for a whole week, and by the time we brought all of the students back into first grade, eating in the cafeteria 6 feet apart, they had never even been in the cafeteria. They knew what to do, and it was easy for them to adjust. So we really have not had behaviors. I hope I'm not jinxing myself.
And where are you going to go from here?
Okay, where do we go from here? So that is the question that we all are trying to figure out. Continue social emotional supports in instruction. I have to say that our SAU has been doing that for a few years anyway, really focused on that. Continue our family involvement. That has been a huge benefit for Bartlett. Determine how to effectively continue to use an online learning platform. We've got an SAU cohort that's working on that right now. Continue to individualize and differentiate instruction. Target areas of academic need that we've seen over the past year, such as letter formation and handwriting, or hard to teach over Zoom, so we are working hard at that. Phonics was a little bit difficult, but their kids are really picking up, and math facts is just something that we practice at school a lot. So we have identified what we need, and we're working on those already. Collaborate to identify student strengths and weaknesses, determine trends, and make instructional changes to meet the needs as they arise, and mostly enjoy being back together as a school community.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions?
Anybody? No, I guess not.
Okay.
Thank you so
Jerry.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'll grab that. Got it? Thank you.
I can wash about 2 cafeteria tables in about, I don't know, a minute and a half. In 5 minutes, we can wash 12 cafeteria tables and the seats. We're pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Doyle.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So, to wrap this up, we take you back to the beginning, to our youngest learners, and as you've heard this evening, the research shows that that's where some of the biggest impacts have been throughout all of this. So, so we're looking at how it's impacted our students at Glen Lake. We've been challenged with teaching young children in a way that preserves health and safety with our learners who very often require very close contact. And at the same time, we want to meet all those individual student needs and inspire a love of learning. So traditionally, that's meant singing, movement, friendships, lots of games, and teachers worked hard to find safe ways to bring all of that to life under some very challenging conditions. So how are our students doing academically, and how do we know? In kindergarten, 58.2% of our students are reading on or above grade level, and 68% of students are on or above grade level in math. At the same time, we're providing supports for those who aren't in those groups, and 21.3% of our students are receiving literacy support through our multi-tiered system of supports. And 18% of students are supported through special education as well. As we go on and look at what we've done, we really focused on social emotional development, on that community building. We've increased our use of the outdoor space. It's been a safe place to be, and it's offered those motor experiences, and a lot of group learning has happened out there as well. We've supported students and families working in remote or hybrid in a variety of ways, and it's important to remember that our students are not able to navigate the computers independently for the most part, or the iPad or the phone or whatever device they're working on. And parents aren't always available to be able to support them in that as well. So there have been a variety of different arrangements that we've tried to work with to support those students. So whether it's been a daycare provider, a grandparent, a sibling, we've tried to help them help our students. And our teachers have spent a lot of time providing tech support, whether that's through emails, over the phone. Our tech team has also helped with that. Administrators and office staff have all worked to help families and support them that way. We've loaned out many devices, as you've heard, at other levels as well. But we also saw the importance of providing other learning experiences that weren't tied to screen time. And we know how important it is to keep a balance in screen time and real life experiences at this age. So when we came back this year, there was a commitment throughout our building that we would offer home activity packets so that families had things to work with. So we sent home containers of Play-Doh, we sent home slates that kids could write on, we sent home weekly themed packets that matched what was going on in the classroom so that they had real things to work with at home as well. And that was for remote students as well as our hybrid learners. So that flexibility was important, and along with the rethinking of routines that we've talked about at all of the levels. We tried to keep the focus when we had students in front of us on face-to-face and hands-on learning so that we were really not depending on that screen time in the classroom so much as well. So. We also, just to mention we had a variety of ways of delivering services. So we had students in remote or in hybrid, or students, we're responsible at our level for preschool child screenings. And as the year has gone on, those have ramped up quite a bit. When we're providing services, then sometimes things can move into a special education referral right away. But sometimes, just like in the schools, we provide some MTSS services first to see if this is a short-term need and can kids kind of catch up with that shorter-term support and to gain more understanding of them as learners before we move into a special ed referral. And so we've done that throughout the year in a variety of ways. We've screened some students over Zoom. We've had students in one at a time for screenings within our school, and our supports we've also provided in the nice weather. We've had speech pathologists, physical therapists, OTs, meeting families outside to do work where families were comfortable doing that. And we've really tried to gauge in all of this, where are our families, whether it's their own health risk or their concerns in that regard, and their child's need, and how can we make it work? So flexibility has been the name of the game as we've gone through this. So how are our students doing socially and emotionally, and how do we know this? Brenda White is one of our veteran kindergarten teachers. We came with the building, we like to say. So, and I asked teachers for input on this, and she wrote something that really, I think, spoke to the heart of all of this and said it really nicely. So.
This school year has been challenging in so many ways. With fewer children in the classroom, I've enjoyed the one-on-one attention I can give to each student without chaos breaking out amongst the rest of the children. Behavior problems were virtually non-existent during hybrid instruction. However, with less actual days in school and more one-to-one attention both at home and school, we have a group of children who are very dependent on adult support to move forward with most tasks, even routine ones. They seek teacher approval constantly and have a difficult time using the resources provided to them, for example, letter lines, schedule, counters, etc. They also do not seem as motivated and excited about learning, even when I'm at my silliest. They're a hard audience this year. The children also have a difficult time helping each other out and using one another as a resource. The amount of students with a lackadaisical attitude toward many learning opportunities is very new this year. This school year has been challenging in so many...
You have to do it twice for some reason.
I can only venture a guess as to why the above is happening, but I'm not alone in noting that independence, motivation, and love of learning is lacking. I hope that 5 days of instruction at full capacity will help. I can continue to teach strategies for increasing independence and create engaging activities to help the kids understand that learning is a fun process and let their curiosity guide my lessons. We can and will play more interactive games so they learn to pay close attention to one another, even if they're not as physically close as they would be typically. I hope that will be enough to create a class of interested, motivated children, but it may take a while to unlearn some of the habits they've picked up over the past year. There's a learning curve here for the teachers as well as the children, and we just need to be aware that our focus will need to be with the social emotional development of these little ones.
I also had spoken with another one of our veteran, came with the building kindergarten teachers, Mr. Tisbert, and he was our remote kindergarten teacher this year. And one of the things we've seen is some really nice growth in reading in that group, really a little like more than we expected. And again, we're not exactly sure of the reasons, but one of the things we suspect is that, as has been mentioned before me, that parents have gotten to see firsthand the reading strategies that teachers are using with these students, and they can better carry them over at home in their work with them there. So that's been a kind of a pleasant surprise along the way. We've I think in general, those students, we were surprised, considering all of this and what we know about young learners, that it went as well as it did. So there's still a lot of, there are some really positive things that have happened throughout all of this, and the creativity and flexibility that's happened along the way. So where do we go from here? Well, first of all, I'd just like to note, because I know this has been a question in this group before, that our Glen Lake professional and support staff are trained in trauma-informed early childhood services, also known as TEACS, and they'll continue to use trauma-informed teaching practices with our young learners, and that's something that we've been working with for quite a few years. So I've been in this position 5 years, and we had started working on that before that, so we'll continue with that as well. And social emotional learning is addressed through the pyramid model, which is a nationally recognized early childhood version of a PBS type program, and it's a state adopted early childhood social emotional learning program, which is aligned with TEACS as well, and then our second step instruction. Our focus moving forward will be on community building and relationships, social emotional learning, and all of those areas, building that self-confidence and independence, and that growth mindset that making mistakes is okay. That's how we learn, and really and trying to embrace a culture of learning and an excitement of learning, and build that engagement. We'll continue to focus on our academic power standards and identify and fill the gaps along the way, and then provide academic and behavioral support through our MTSS and special education services. But one thing I note here, as in every other year that we've been in operation, what we've always done is we strive to meet students where they're at and move them forward, laying a good foundation of academic and social emotional skills that they can build on as they continue to move. So that, in essence, is what we've done since we opened, and that's what we'll continue to do. And it might look a little bit different right now, but the challenge is the same. So we look forward to moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
Any
Stoyles.
questions for
me?
Kathy?
Go ahead, Ellen.
Okay, one, thank you for mentioning trauma support. It is something that has been sensitive for me, and I was trained in it as well. And I hope that we as a district have a continuum of supporting not only the children, but the families. And I know that's difficult, but if we can identify this early, we can help these kids and everybody around them. I want to say that this year has been difficult for our entire staff, and I hope the board would join me in thanking our administration and our entire staff for their ability to deal with this and adjust and be flexible and meet the needs to the greatest extent human beings can address this. But also, so many parents have struggled and trying to help their children with school, and I think a thank you to them and a congratulations to them as well. This has been super hard on them as well, and many have really stepped up. I know many have helped their neighbors' kids, kind of thing. I think that from what I've observed this past year, there's been so much pulling together in neighborhoods and throughout the community that I'm very proud to live in Goffstown and to have seen what this community has really tried to do and pull together, and how our school community has reached out and tried to help and support all our children. I had the pleasure, the blessing of being what I'll term as a learning facilitator throughout this, and I got to see how it was happening, this hybrid, and it was quite impressive. And I got to see a particular student that I worked with show so much growth and independence and the executive functioning skills I'm not sure would have happened in the classroom, because it was required that this child learn to put it together themselves. And I'm hoping we see that with a lot of these kids going forward, that there's very much a positive that comes out of this for many of them. Because to be successful, they had to develop those skills. So for me, a big thank you to the entire staff.
Yeah, well, thank you.
For
And I think
everything you've all done.
there are two things that you raised that really that that we've tried to show children, and that we can do hard things, and we work together to get through this and to figure out ways to make it work for all of us. And the other thing that your comments made me think of is just that I think it's important for us to thank all the families who welcomed us into their homes via Zoom. I mean, that's not a small thing to open up your home. And we all know there are days when our homes don't look the way or function the way that we might hope that they would. And so I think to really trust us with that is no small thing. And to do that for their children and all of the different, I think everybody has done the best that they can, and it's been something really impressive to be a part of. So it's an honor.
Thank you, Mrs. Doyle. Thank you, Ellen. Well said. Is there anything else, MC?
So the last slide simply says gratitude. Thank you so much for allowing us to present information to you this evening. You've given us some wonders. Hopefully we've answered some of yours. And onward we go together to the next step.
Thank
So
you very much.
you.
This took a lot of time and effort, and we
Thank you,
appreciate
Mrs.
that.
Berry and team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So they can all go home?
In fact, they absolutely 100% need to go home, except for Mr. Huft.
Poor Justin. Next. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, so we're going to move on to our committee reports. Scott,
I'm just stretching.
that's fine. You're up first with manifest and vouchers.
Just give me 1 second. I don't have a paper copy. I have to bring it to my screen. All right, so the manifest that you have before you is a larger one than normal, $2,188,085.23, of which, as usual, our payroll, taxes, and benefits are $1.67 million of that total. Special ed activity is almost $89,000, and your general expenses are pretty much the typical ones. In terms of Goffstown Truck Center, your SAU assessment, and then some energy costs. You'll note that we've been paying our copier lease on a quarterly basis now. We are still
believe it or not, trickling in on propane and oil expenses, and so those will curtail over the next week or two. We had installed a handicap door entrance. I don't know if you realized that during your coming in here, but it was part of the NES&C accreditation, and that was something that we had just recently done. So that's been taken care of. We've got some consumables in terms of curriculum at Maple Ave. We had to repair the stairs at Maple Avenue to the portable. This is the one that's in front of the building because the stairs were rotted. They were deteriorated. And BMO Harris Bank, that is the credit card, the purchasing card that we use. And the vast majority of that was facilities parts, parts for things like heating and air handler parts we have a technician now who does a lot of those types of repairs. And then we also had expenses related to the multiple vaccine clinics that we have held. So we didn't have any food service over 5,000 in this particular manifest. So that is your summary of the expenses paid for this manifest.
Anybody have any questions for Scott? All right, seeing none, we'll need a motion to approve this manifest.
I'll move to approve the manifest of May 17th in the amount of $2,188,085.23.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Jared. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. Okay, Scott, anything else at this time?
Later on,
Okay.
I have
You have more
a few
stuff?
things, yeah.
Okay. All right, Budget Committee report, Jared?
Budget Committee has not met since our last meeting, and the chair does not plan on reconvening until September.
All right. P&C, Retta?
No, we also have not met, and just a reminder that we do have the retreat happening in maybe
I can't hear you,
21st
Retta.
at
I'm sorry.
3 o'clock.
I can't hear you.
Okay. Just a reminder that we have the retreat June 21st at 3 o'clock at St. A's. I don't think we've nailed down the location, exact location, but that will be coming out.
Thank you,
June
Retta.
21st, did you say?
Yes, that's our last school board meeting.
There it is. 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. All right. All right, Facilities Planning Committee, who's doing that one? Jared?
I mean, I can
Ellen,
speak to
Scott?
it to a degree. I have to work with Ellen and Terry and Jared on kind of an agenda, and I'll do that, this week. And the meeting is obviously next week, and I think we have 9 returning members, which is nice.
Good.
May I request, would it be okay if Jared or I, since we have been through this once, if Terry has something, could just send you ideas for agenda?
Sure. If you want to email me, that would be
Okay.
great. I was thinking about just kind of giving a recap of where we were.
Yeah.
But yeah, please do so. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott. All right, so Policy Review Committee met last Monday. That was our last meeting for the year. We'll determine a date in the fall. Informational only, we just reviewed JBAA and GBAA and put a date on it that it was reviewed. C&E?
We met last Monday as well, and I believe everyone received a copy of the elementary handbook.
That's later.
And okay, so we'll talk about those later?
Yeah, that's later in new business.
Okay. Then we had an update on the IXL implementation. And I'm sorry, I don't have COVID and I'm coughing. I have a terrible allergy day today, so I didn't want you all
Pollen
to
is bad.
think that you're going to catch something terrible from me. Christina Lamson, who is the Maple Avenue Library Media Specialist, connected learning teacher, presented the IXL implementation process to us. She prepared PowerPoint slides that provided the subcommittee with examples of what the student, parents, and teachers see within the software program. Oh, I'm sorry, I turned that around so I wouldn't cough in it. She shared the robust student interface for the skills that intersects with current core programs. The skill assignment can be differentiated to address current student skill levels, thus providing acceleration, practice, and remediation. Special education teachers, general education teachers, and interventionalists will collaborate together with the software to further meet the needs of the individual students. She also shared the implementation timeline for the summer professional development for K through 6 teachers and for the 21-22 school year. They have started working on this already, and it was fascinating to listen to her talk about how it's working with the kids. The kids are able to do an assignment, and help me if I'm not explaining this correctly, but they'll do the assignment and then they can go back and they can correct the assignment and go through different levels of their assignments, and the teacher can do diagnostics with their work through this computer program, and it sounds like just what we need for our students after COVID, to really find out the teacher knows exactly where they are with their doing a thing over again, and where they haven't done so well, she can assign them something to make that skill stronger. And it was just very interesting to listen to how this all works, and I think it's going to really help our students move on, and for our teachers to know who's strong and what they need help with, where they might need enrichment for our students that have been doing well through the pandemic, and the amount of information on each student that the teachers have, kind of just like, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how can they keep track of all of that? Because she just seemed to have so much information from this program on kids and where they were and where they needed to be. It was fascinating, I think. And then the other part of it was pretty much the updates of the SAS testing and the SAT testing. Some students exempted from the testing, and we also, she explained to us how we were going to get this presentation tonight, which was very interesting. That was, do you have anything to add?
I just think is it IXL?
IXL, yeah.
It was a pilot, very well received by students and the teachers that participated. Lots of excitement around it.
Yeah. Encouraging.
Yes, thank you.
Encouraging.
All right, Ginny, you're up again with stipend committee.
Oh, okay. We have been meeting. We recently sent our first report to Brian of questions that he had that we had been working on. And we just sent out a second survey to get a little bit more information from the people that are coaching, doing co-curriculars in sports. And that just went out tomorrow. I believe it's going out. So we will be meeting after those surveys come back in to continue on.
Great, thank you, Jenny. All right, the joint area subcommittee met last Thursday. Basically, and Ginny and Retta can add to it that were there, we went through the area agreement from New Boston with the red lines, which we will go over tonight in non-public. Basically, it was clearer on what we've already been doing. So we'll go over it tonight, see if we want to add anything or change anything. So it was a good meeting. I thought so.
Yep, very good.
And then the next one, the full joint area board will be meeting June 1st, which is a Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and that is a remote meeting. And I think that's it with subcommittees, and then we have superintendent report.
Thank you. Just a few things to share with the board this evening. Regarding the retreat, we do have a location ready. We just secured it and just executed the contract with them. We will be at the Institute for Politics, which is the building that's kind of down the hill from the university on the right-hand side. So we'll make sure everyone has directions. I wanted to let the board know that I have been working with the Ware superintendent for 2 students who have moved to Ware. And at the request of the Ware School District, they will be continuing on a tuition basis for the remainder of the year. So that I've executed that arrangement with the Ware School District at the full tuition cost. I wanted to let you know we have worked with our support staff association and have agreed to a memorandum of understanding regarding contracted custodial services. We have in our contract, the union has the exclusive right for bargaining and representing custodians, but I think the board is aware we've struggled finding and hiring and retaining custodians. So we do have contracted custodial services that we've signed a contract with, but in order to do that, these are many of the nuances. We had to enter into an agreement where we just lay everything out and make it clear that this is something that we're doing as an outcome of the pandemic. Unfortunately, you've heard me talk about the Medicaid to Schools program. There are even more new restrictions that we're contending with that pertain to medical diagnoses. This is new information on top of what has already been really a pretty significant revenue loss for us from a federal program that has existed for decades. So we continue to struggle there. Vaccine clinics, we've been busy. We did our second dose of our 16 and 17-year-old clinic on Friday night, and we vaccinated around 400 kids on last Friday. We have our 12 to 15 first clinic this Thursday, and we have 390 signed up. So we have, again, I would share my appreciation to the Manchester Public Health Department as well as Chief Allard and the Goffstown Fire Department for all of their support. And actually, at our last clinic, I called the chief in Bedford, Chief Scott Hunter, and asked him if he could send a couple of his staff to help with the clinic, and he did. He sent us 4 paramedics who were able to help with our clinic. So we were very appreciative to Chief Hunter for his support. And regarding stipends, Mrs. McKinnon mentioned this, but I would also share that in addition to the committee work that's been going on, the board will remember that there's an $8,500 allotment that we have to negotiate with the union. So kind of a parallel track to Ginny's committee is, in fact, today, Scott and I, along with Mrs. McGrath, went and met with the leadership of the union, and I think we're making great progress. So I would share that I think we have a lot of shared interest in this. It's very cordial, and I think we're at a good place, and I think we're largely in agreement on all of the big stuff. So that has continued to go well. So the only other thing that I would share is just a few thoughts on COVID. I know I'm not doing kind of the full assessment anymore, but I do want you to know COVID is still happening for us. We have 11 current active cases right now, with 7 being at Mountain View. Now, the 7 is concerning to me. We've had a number of cases. We had 5 yesterday. 5 cases at Mountain View. A number of them involve siblings. So it's not as many households as you may think, but right now we have 7 active cases. And anything that is a number that large, I would anticipate that the Department of Health and Human Services will likely reach out to me and start wondering if we have a cluster. Our assessment has been these cases are not related. So I think at this point I feel confident that we're in a good place. But again, the numbers nationally continue to look better for the United States of America, which is great. I think our vaccine percentages are continuing to increase, which is very encouraging. But Here's boots on the ground. I've got 7 active cases at Mountain View. I've got a lot of kids out on quarantine. So we are still very much, even though people are kind of thinking the pandemic's over, not so much for us. And I would also share lastly that the new CDC guidance that came out last week that essentially said all fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks anymore. I've had a number of people, employees, asking about that. I've had parents asking about that. We have 19 days of school left. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of unvaccinated children. So at this point, I'm not planning on making any changes for the rest of the school year. I would say I continue to be encouraged that I think next fall will continue to look as close to normal as I think we possibly can. So I did want folks to know that. We are going to have some recommendations around COVID mitigation measures and more specifically masks as it pertains to athletics when we get to that part of the agenda with Mr. Huft. But I would pause there and ask if there are any questions from any board members.
I saw Jenny's hand up. You were talking about contracts with custodial, for custodial work. How many people do you have coming in?
Right now in Goffstown, we don't have any.
Okay.
But I do have them in New Boston. In New Boston, we have been unable to recruit or retain a number of custodians, and I have 3, 2 or 3, I think it's 3 at this point, contracted custodians in New Boston. We wanted to engage in that memorandum with the union if we needed to get contracted services, that we were cleared to do it. And again, you know, this is not us trying to not hire employees. I'd rather hire my own people as opposed to a contracted service. But right now, hiring anywhere is problematic for us. So right now we have 0, Ginny.
Okay.
But if we had to bring some in, we have a contract in place. And like I said, New Boston, we have 3.
Okay. I was just concerned about privatization.
Yeah, that is, I again want to
to
give the board my assurance that is not the direction that we're going in. We're not using this opportunistically to get rid of a whole class of employees. I want employees, I don't want contracted services. So that's just, you know, our belief.
Okay, thank you.
So Ellen had her hand
Yeah,
up.
when we do bring in people, contracted services, when a district does, those employees still work under, need to comply with and work under the union contract. Is that correct? Or are they exempt from it?
They would be required to follow all of our rules, regulations, expectations, et cetera, but they would not be subject to the collective bargaining agreement because we have a contract with an agency.
That's separate.
It's separate and it's different. Right now, I don't believe we're anticipating any contracted custodial services, but we wanted to have the groundwork laid that should we need to go that route, that we've already cleared that hurdle with the union.
Thank you.
Which we have.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Jared.
Just from a superintendent report, I know you said earlier that we'd be looking to reallocate some of our positions due to some of the learnings that we found. Are we going to have that in the next meeting, that superintendent report on what you plan on doing?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be our next meeting review?
That'll be our next meeting. So the kind of the sequence, and I apologize, MC's presentation was very long, very detailed. I think they were very excited to share a lot of information. But, you know, the now is, now what? And the now what is, very clearly, we've seen dips in some of our standardized testing, even though we're not finished and we don't have the comparative data to the state. When we just look at cohort groups, we've seen a decline. Math in particular, I think math is probably the most challenging subject area to learn remotely. So when schools were closed last spring and when schools were in a hybrid model, I think that many children struggled, many students struggled with learning math. So that means that we need to beef it up and hit the gas on that a little more for next year. So we will have a number of recommendations programmatically as well as positions. And what we're trying to do, we always have to be mindful of the cost and the impact of our budgets. So what I don't want to do is start spending, deficit spending next year's budget before we even get to the month of July. So we've been very mindful to try to use grant funds, to try to use existing positions. Sometimes you'll see I'm going to have a couple of positions that I'm moving or I'm shifting, but next meeting we'll do that, Jared. And really, I think it'll be the first step of many. I think that we're going to, as we continue to see more information, we continue to look at the research, I think that we'll need to say, okay, there will be things in 5 months or 6 months that we don't know now, and we'll have to adjust at that point. But I think what we've continued to say is we have to be flexible, we have to be nimble, we have to be able to respond quickly to what our needs are so that we know immediately there are going to be needs when school starts next fall. So we want to hit those and really focus on some of our more at-risk students. So to make sure that we're not having an increase in the number of students dropping out, to make sure that kids are continuing to earn credits and move towards their diploma, that kids are learning, they're growing, and we want to make sure that we have as many supports as we can within the budget. And hopefully I think the board will say, gee, we thought you were going to ask for more. So I think that we've been pretty creative. I've got a list of positions that we're going to be bringing forth, and the majority of them will have no direct budget impact for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen?
Brian, also I would imagine I know we're dealing with what we need to do for next year, but I would think particularly for our youngest students, this is going to be a multi-year
Sure.
Impact and need to address. I mean, what these kids have not been exposed to. I keep telling people, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, maybe even third grade, they're learning the foundational skills to build on in subsequent years, and I don't know how many have really been able to do that. So there's going to be years where more attention is going to be needed for those kids as they move up over time, I think.
I think that's true of every element of our society. So people that have been impacted by the pandemic will continue to be impacted for years to come.
Yeah.
I think people's ability to reacclimate and adjust back to, some pre-pandemic version of life is going to be a challenge. So I think we just have to continue to be vigilant, be patient, take care of our kids, take care of our families, and work together, which is exactly what we've always done.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Anyone else for Brian before we move on? We're good? All right, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, old business. I think that's you, Scott, capital projects.
This is going to be,
review.
Mr. Gross is going to have a number of things on the agenda.
Yeah.
Mr. Gross.
Yeah, so the first couple, they have to do with our capital projects, and Laura put this together for tonight, and I asked her to put together some motions because they need to be specific whenever we request funds from the town for impact fees and when we request funds from the trustees. The first one that you should have, is regarding the Glen Lake project. And you'll see that there's a request to have the town reimburse us $166,762.32 for this project. Interestingly enough, you'll note that our original project budget was almost $1.1 million, and we came in at a cost of almost $1.2 million. I was speaking with Jared, earlier, and Jared always seems to talk about contingency reserves and reserves. Had we done that, we would have been kind of right on the money with our project, but in this project we didn't do that because we did have other costs that were not budgeted, which were about $100,000 worth. So all that being said, the final cost of that project came in at $1,191,762.22. And then Laura broke down the different vendors and what those costs were. So before there would be a motion, I'm here to entertain any questions if you have any.
Anybody
I know
have
this
any
one's kind of been in the rearview mirror, but.
Go ahead, Alan.
Just real quick, how does the use of these funds from the impact fees impact the plans on the CIP?
Not much, because I've kind of figured that in. I had estimated that we would spend about $150,000 in impact fees. It ended up being a little higher at $166 and change. But I did jot down, right now, our impact fee balance is $425,000. After this, we will have about $258,000 in impact fees.
But you had calculated most of that in when you were
Yeah.
going through CIP?
Yeah. And those impact fees, there are some projects, you'll note that there is a project that's across the street from the Villa where they broke ground. We won't be getting impact fees on that one because it's an over 55 community. But Bog Road, I'm told that that project may be proceeding in the next 6 months. That one we would be getting impact fees. And then there's the Mill project, which has been approved, but yet that's been stagnant. So if these things do happen, then you would have more. So that's kind of where we stand there. So
Be aware also that there's 78 acres for sale on Bog Road, on New Boston Road. It's in Goffstown on the river.
yeah, just saw that.
So,
Yeah, I saw
78
that too.
acres, big sand pit.
Yeah.
And it's in the floodplain.
Yes, it is.
The other thing I would share about the project across from the Villa, I did want just to remind the board that the decision not to charge school impact fees was a decision made by a town board, and we submitted a letter in opposition to that. So I still disagree with that decision.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Scott before we do a motion, which is written out at the bottom?
It's written out somewhere?
Yeah,
the very
Laura
bottom.
put it in the bottom to make it
I'll make a
easier.
motion to withdraw $166,762.32 from the school impact fees held by the town of Goffstown and deposit into the capital projects fund to fund the Glen Lake module addition.
Thank you, Jared. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ellen, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed.
The next capital projects, that, and again, these are all, they've already been done. That was the GHS rear stairs, that was done last summer, as well as the lighting retrofit project in our gymnasiums. That was the one that you'll recall where we got about 75% incentives from New Hampshire Saves, Eversource, et cetera. So I think most of you are well aware of those two projects. And again, Laura kind of typed up what she thought a motion would look like.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Scott before we do a motion? All right, seeing none. Go ahead, Jared.
I'll make a motion to withdraw $57,626 from the facility CRF held by the town of Goffstown trustees of the trust funds and deposit in the capital projects fund, of which $40,756 will fund the GHS rear stairs and $16,870 will fund the lighting project.
Thank you, Jared. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. All right, the next is the foreign exchange. This got pushed up a little bit because they need a decision.
Well, there is the letter B, the cistern bid approval.
Oh, I thought we just did that. No, we didn't
No.
do that. All right, go ahead. Sorry,
Well,
Scott.
you're probably a mind reader because there is no bid approval.
Okay.
Today was the deadline and we did not get any bids.
Okay.
We got an email from one vendor stating that they were unable to contact their subcontractors and apologized profusely for that. We also reached out to another vendor. I think it was last Tuesday. I actually personally called a vendor. This is what we're doing with this project. It's very unique, and there aren't many companies who kind of do this. Basically, there's a big water tank at Mountain View that has to be drained. You have to take off a plate. Somebody has to go in, scrape this water tank to get all of the rust and debris out of it. Then we're going to put like an epoxy in the inside. In the meantime, we have to store all the water and hook it up to pump so that, God forbid, so that our water suppression system, our fire suppression system is still intact and usable. And then once all that's done, then we refill the tank. I think we have two routes to go here. One route would be to simply rebid it in another month. So again, we would have to come before you as your last meeting. So we have the due date before that. The second one would be to, essentially, you'd have to waive your purchasing policy and allow the facilities director and the superintendent to contact and try to get the best pricing. We have a rough estimate of where we think this is going to fall, which you've seen in your CIP and other types of numbers. But this is not like, you're going out to bid on copier paper. I mean, there are not that many people. There might only be 2 or 3 vendors who will do this type of work.
In New England.
In New England. One of the concerns, honestly, that I have is if you put it out to bid again and you only get one, it's not a great position to be in. I think, and again, I respect your input here, but it might be better for us to simply let Randy contact different companies and try to get the best price that he can and to schedule it when we can get it scheduled, because we're going to see more of this, as Brian mentioned, with these trades on things that we're doing with labor, et cetera. But this one is so darn unique that I'm a little nervous about putting it out to bid again because of only getting one vendor who bids. It makes me nervous.
Do we need a motion on some?
I think for now, let us keep working on this, and I think probably as we get a little closer towards the end of the end of June, we'll be probably asking.
Just an update.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that, Scott?
Or even the next board meeting?
What I don't know is, I don't think this is a project that is like, oh my God, it must happen like ASAP. I think we're okay in terms of it is preventative cleaning of the tank. But it's when we would be able to schedule this type of work, because I think ideally we want to have it done when there are no kids in the school.
Yep. And this is an example of one that everything is working properly at this point, and there's nothing that isn't. And if we have to put this off for a year, then I'm prepared to do that. So, we'll work closely with Lieutenant Connor, our fire inspector, make sure that we're doing everything we need to. But, even though we have the intention of doing this project, we very well may not be able to. And I think that's okay. So, right now, it's very expensive to do a lot of trade-related things. So, for example, we were going to do our heating controls at Bartlett and Maple. We've decided we're going to be better off waiting. We've been encouraged by a couple of vendors. If this isn't mission critical, put it off, you'll get a better price. So we appreciate people being honest with us, because right now, many of these trades are at a premium.
Just to inform the board, I sent out the RFP on the irrigation system, and I've already heard from 2 out of 6 vendors that I know of that are interested, that they're booked already.
For the whole summer.
For the summer. So this is another one where I'm probably going to have to go in and change the dates on this RFP. This might not happen this summer. And we might have to do it in the fall, next spring, next summer, but it's just the nature, whether it be labor shortages, supply shortages, just increased demand. It's a lot different, the landscape, than it was like 6 months to a year ago. Just a lot different.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to keep you apprised of what's going on.
Jared, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Brian, just for the Sistine, coming back to the Sistine bid approval, would it be helpful to actually have a motion to waive the appropriate policies, knowing this is going to have to be done later? I mean, we're going to have to do a policy waive anyway. I guess something that you just want to do later versus now?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting the sense Scott would rather see it now, but I'd rather talk to the prospective bidders and get a sense of, if you had another couple of weeks, would you put a bid together? The one that needed to talk to their subs, if you had time to do that. I'd kind of rather chase it down a little bit more, and then we can make a decision whether we want to just try to negotiate as good of a price as we can get, or where I will likely find myself is if Lieutenant Connor is in support of waiting to put this off, rebid it early for next summer, and see how we do at that point. So I think at this point, my preference would be to just, let's let Randy talk to a few of these vendors, get a feel for where they're at, and then we'll come back to the board if we can put this one on the next agenda if we have any updates, as well as potentially the retreat agenda.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we can move on to C, foreign exchange students.
Yeah, so the policy in reference here is your school board policy JFABB, and Mrs. Moran was kind enough to include this in your packets. According to our policy, we have had a long history of supporting a foreign exchange student program. This is something that I think Goffstown should be proud of, but I need to let you know that because we are a district that has historically supported foreign exchange students, we are one of the first districts to continue to be asked to accept students. So right now, by policy, we have 5 spaces if the board is in support of reinstituting the foreign exchange student program. I already have 6 requests. Now, it has been a custom of this board that if we've gone over, the board has discussed whether they supported increasing that number. I will share with you that although these are New Boston or Goffstown families that host these students, these are for-profit placement agencies. So I do want to just make it clear that the people who are looking to place students here, many of them have a financial incentive to do so because they're getting students placed. However, having said that, this is a program that we have long supported, and my recommendation for next school year would be to resume under policy JFABB, the foreign exchange student program, and for next school year, because we didn't allow any this year, to increase the number to 6.
So let's have some discussion. What is anybody have a thought, opinion? Of even first allowing anybody, let alone 6, coming over. People are allowed to go in and out.
Well, I think whether you would want to go to the United States is a decision that a family would have to make wherever they're coming from. But, I think in all likelihood, I think cases will continue to go down over the summer. I think in all likelihood, we'll see some kind of a increase next fall into the winter. I think that's probably inevitable for COVID numbers. But I think the United States is going to be open for business. I think people will be able to come here, to travel here. And I think that we'll be able to be in a position to safely run schools.
Go ahead, Ginny.
Do you have any idea of where the students are coming from that have applied?
They're a combination. I haven't seen, Mrs. Lewis has the whole list. I've heard about a couple from Europe and a couple from, I think, South Korea, and there might be one from the Middle East somewhere. But I would say very typical. We tend to get more Asian or European students.
They would have to go through all the testing and everything that would.
Yep, they would have to go through, anything that the United States is requiring for anyone to be able to come here, and obviously anything that we require, they would have to comply with, and that's never been a problem in the past.
It's always been.
Ellen, go ahead.
Can we require, prior to them coming, immediately prior, that they have, bring with them a negative COVID test?
I think that if that's the requirement of the U.S. as part of our immigration policy, I would say yes. In all likelihood, these students will be here and will be quarantined before they come to school. So certainly international travel, we have not reduced the quarantine expectations, so they would minimally have to quarantine for 14 days because it's international travel. Right now, the only waivers of quarantine is domestic travel within the United States or to our territories, which includes Puerto Rico and Guam.
Regardless of what the federal government is requiring of travelers, can we, as a district, require a negative test and vaccination prior to them coming?
Well, vaccination is a very, I would say, the test, we certainly could, I think. We would likely have to do that at our expense. The vaccine is a whole nother endeavor, and I might caution the board that I think at this point, requiring a vaccine is not something that, particularly when you're talking about vaccines that only have emergency authorization. These are not vaccines that have been fully approved. I would caution against that. I don't think it's going to be relevant, though, Ellen, because for them to come here, they're going to be here a good chunk of the summer anyhow. So these kids will be here. They'll be off quarantine by the time school starts up. I would say if any kid, let's say hypothetically, there's some random kid from Denmark who's coming. That kid shows up the day before school starts. I got news for that kid. He's not coming. He's going to have to sit out, he's going to have to quarantine. We may require a test of some sort at that point in time, but I don't think we need to do anything special. I would say just let me work with these families and see who we get, when we're going to get them.
And what about potential liability on our part for the district if the child gets it while they're here? Or can we be in any way held liable?
I don't think any more so than we would be for any other student. And, for the most part, from a legal perspective, if we're acting in good faith, we're following the recommendations of our public health officials, and through no act of malice on our own, if a student were to contract COVID, I would say that I don't think that we have any increased exposure as a result of that being a foreign exchange student.
Thank you.
Jenny?
I'm just thinking of a situation that happened before, and could we just have something in it where, we don't really know exactly what's going to go on. Hopefully things are going to go without any issues, but just so that parents know if something comes up and we have to say, no, I'm really sorry, we're not going to be able to take your student this year, that's kind of known ahead of time, that yes, we will, as long as things go smoothly. If something doesn't go smoothly, just to understand that your student may not be able to make the trip.
I think from a planning perspective, the logistics of that, while I understand and agree that we should have some kind of an escape clause, let's say there's some new unforeseen variant that we don't even know about right now, and that is wreaking havoc through the United States and in the Northeast. The vaccines are not effective against it. That would be a situation where we would say, we're not going to accept anyone for this program. But we could do something where I strongly caution people to recognize that the school board still reserves the right to change the decision. But I think for a planning perspective, I think it might be hard for a family to say, I'm going to send my kid, but I don't really know if they're going to be able to go because, the school might make a decision in August and, now what? So I can say, I'd be happy to say if it's the board's intention to support this recommendation, that at this point, based on the information that we have, we are proceeding with the program. Should circumstances change, that future decisions could be made regarding this program. And I think that's just the reality of anything during a global pandemic. But, from a logistics perspective, people need to do visas, they need to go through there's just a lot that these families and these agencies have to coordinate and do. So I think we want to, let them know that there is a caution, that at this point we're saying yes, it is possible that the circumstances could change and would require the board to make difficult decisions. We don't anticipate that, but it could happen. And if you want to place a kid here, you need to recognize that that's part of what comes with it.
And to be fair, the U.S. is allowing people to come in from other countries, that's kind of a factor as well. So you might not even need to put any kind of parameters on it, because I think if it was unsafe for people to travel into the U.S., we would have that protection.
Yeah, certainly if the country shut down travel from a particular location or a continent or whatever it may be, then that would give us, that cover. I would agree with Janelle.
So Jarrett and then Retta. Go ahead, Jared.
I'd like to make a motion to re-implement policy JFABB with the exception of 5 students increased to 6 students.
All right, so I had a motion. Let me do a second because I know there's more people who have questions. Is there a second for this motion? All right, so Jared and then Retta. So go ahead, Retta. You had...
I just wanted to make the point that not all of the sending agencies are for-profit or non-profit. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Yeah, thank you, Retta.
Ginny, Ellen, did you each have a hand up?
Yeah,
no. Ellen?
Yes. I guess, based on when we received these applications, I don't know if they must have come in at different times, unless they came in as a bunch. Where's the sixth student from? New Boston or Goffstown?
I don't know. And it would just be a function of who got in line first, because...
Right, but if the sixth, according to our policy, if that child is from New Boston, they pay tuition. That's why I'm asking.
They pay tuition from New Boston anyhow.
That becomes part of the ADM calculation and tuition?
Not the ADM in the sense that we don't get adequacy for a foreign exchange student, but they're part of our student count, yes.
So...
Although, if the state was giving adequacy for a foreign exchange student, I think I'd be okay with a little more adequacy.
Yeah, right. So Ascending District does pay more than...
They don't pay more. They pay the tuition fee. And Scott, maybe you can pull up the section in the area that speaks to this.
Yeah, I've read it and I got the policy.
Yeah, we don't, per the area, we don't come in and charge $20,000 because it's a foreign exchange student. It's the typical rate.
And those students count as however many are coming
Yeah.
from the Boston that they pay in that regular formula.
Yes.
So for those additional students, there's more money coming in.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any other discussion before I do roll call? Okay, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed.
Chair,
Yes.
this is one of the policies that needs a language change.
Okay.
I think I put it on my list that I sent to you and Brian. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down, 3rd line. At the end, all 3 districts.
Yep.
That needs a language change.
Yeah, once we get back into our routine, we're gonna start
Yep.
going back through old policies and try to fix them. All right, thank you, Ellen. All right, new business, Bartlett and Maple Avenue Handbook.
Okay.
This is your turn, Ginny.
Once again, I believe everyone received a copy of the handbook.
Yep.
There were no substantive changes. Names, date, and the new electronic registration process was put into the handbooks, and made some clarification in language maybe are the changes. Does anybody have any questions on anything that they saw in the handbooks? We reviewed them and didn't see anything that, they're basically the same old handbooks as last year. They were going to make some changes to it, but they decided to wait for another year to do those changes. So basically, it's just the changes that needed to be made to make them updated for the 21-22 school year.
So we need a motion. Do you have a question,
No,
Ellen?
just a comment that
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate that there's the continued effort to make them as much similar, even though they're different facilities at different places.
Yeah.
Keeping them as much aligned as possible. And I particularly like the how to pick up and drop off.
Yes.
Because I know our schools have this down to a virtual science.
Yeah. And the schools, the principals have spent a lot of time going over these with a fine-tooth comb, making sure every single thing is included and that they're similar, that they're as close to duplication as absolutely possible.
Right.
We need a motion tonight for this so that they can go to the printers.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Do you need one motion or 2 distinct motions?
I think one motion
Just
is
to
fine.
include Bartlett and Maple.
I would make the motion to accept the handbook for the 21-22 year from both Bartlett and Maple Avenue Elementary Schools.
All right, I have a motion by Ginny. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
By Jared. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. Thank you, CNA, for doing
Thank you.
that. Next is the high school parking lot.
Sure,
Gross.
you have a memo that I prepared for you. There were two facility use requests. The first one is the use of the Goffstown High School upper parking lot here by the fields, and St. Matthew's Church has requested to use that upper parking lot for outdoor services on Sunday mornings between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. starting in June and ending in August. According to your policy KF and regulation KFR, it would be a $50 fee for a 4-hour block, which the church is more than willing to pay. And obviously, as part of that policy, they have to provide an insurance certificate naming the district as an additional insured. I have no concerns on my end as your BA, as long as they meet those requirements. I talked with Justin. There are no uses of the field or the parking lot during those summer months.
Okay. So why don't we, because I know there's also the why, so why don't we do one at a time? Does anybody have any questions about the St. Matthew's Church?
I'll move approval of the request.
All right, so we have Ellen makes a motion. Do I have a second by Jenny? Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. So now we have the why.
Yeah, you'll recall that the YMCA has traditionally provided before and after school services at both Maple and Bartlett Elementary School. In the past, we had a contract almost, with the Y, and we kind of went away from that. And this is really now more of a facility use of our premises. And what the Y is looking to do is similar to in the past, where they typically will use the gymnasium and they might use a classroom or two. This one is it's not the fee schedule would not work for a situation like this. They're also kind of performing a community benefit. So what I had recommended, and again, you would have to approve this, would be essentially a $4,000 a year charge for the Y. It would be billed in two instances, one for the first semester and one for the second semester. And they do the same thing. They fill out the forms. They do provide their insurance certificate. I have witnessed their program at Bartlett and at Maple. It's very well run. Provides a great service to those who need it.
I'll move approval of the Y request.
I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. So now we have the high school upper scoreboard replacement.
Sure, I'm going to ask Justin if he wouldn't mind coming up. So I've been having conversations with Justin about our scoreboards for the last few months, actually the last several months. I kind of jinxed us to a degree because we've been working on the softball one for the last. I'm sorry.
Hang on one second. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Sit with the microphone. Go ahead, Scott.
We've been working with the softball scoreboard, and we have invested a little over $1,500, almost $2,000 into that scoreboard with circuit boards and power, all these different issues. And I had texted Justin, and I saw a picture that, oh, it's working. And then I came to the meeting, and it's not working. So our scoreboards are about 20 years old, and for those of you who've been on the board for a while, they were originally donated by the Coca-Cola Corporation in lieu of an advertising type agreement. That was a 10-year type of an agreement to not only advertise on the signs itself, but also to have an exclusivity in terms of Coca-Cola products. That agreement is no longer in place, but where we find ourselves now is we've had some glitches on the upper one, which we resolved. Now we had some problems on the softball field, which are not resolved. And the upper scoreboard is way more important in our opinions because we have multiple sports. It's our game field. It's also one where we have many sports that require a clock. And if we experience what we're experiencing right now on the softball field and we don't deal with this proactively, it's going to really hamper our ability to have competitions, because we probably have to rent temporary scoreboard. I don't know what we would do in that case. So what I am suggesting, and Justin also concurs, is that we proactively address this before we run into problems. I think on the softball one, we've already invested quite a bit of money. I think we got to try to stretch this thing out to see if we can finally fix it. So that one is going to need replacement, but not immediately. But to take a proactive step in terms of replacing it, I did obtain quotes from. There are two different manufacturers for these things. One is called Watchfire, which is a little bit less expensive than the Dektronics. It's about $3,000 less. Our experience within the district is that we have almost all Dektronic scoreboards, both inside our gymnasiums, Mountain View, and at the high school here, as well as external ones. And so far so good, right, Justin? In terms of when we have an issue with one of these, whether it be inside or outside, they've been fairly responsive in terms of helping us solve these problems. We don't have much experience with Watchfire. My personal opinion is I think the Dektronics board is a better board, and it allows us in some cases to use a common controller, so that if you were at Mountain View, you could use it. If your controller broke, you could use it at the high school, because they are used on the same frequency. So that's kind of where we find ourselves. In terms of the cost, the cost of the board with the installation is almost $2,600. The electrician is about $1,000 to $1,500, and then I did build in a contingency reserve of 10%, which is why I'm requesting up to $30,123 for this project. It would be coming from from our capital reserve fund, because it is currently an asset. You'll note from the photograph that there are no advertisements on this sign. However, it does not preclude us from doing that down the road, but that's something that is not a discussion for tonight. That's something that can happen later on. Right now, your policies don't really allow for that, but there are opportunities there to recoup the cost of these signs and to put that away, so that if you have to replace one down the road, the advertising on that would pay for it. And furthermore, you can do things like an RFP, where you can put it out to bid for 5 years. You put in like morality clauses, so if the advertiser is a company and something is, you don't want to be associated with it, then we can pull the sign down, only pay them for that, reimburse them for that 1 year, that type of thing. But I think the more immediate thing for us is to try to get this sign proactively replaced, the board proactively replaced before, and you'll see that was an artist rendering, or a rendering from Sousa with respect to what it would look like, a big G on top. And then there were advertising panels, they would be on the bottom, or on the sides.
Anybody have any questions for Scott? Alan? Oh, Jared, go ahead.
So this is just for the one scoreboard, but there are two that need to be replaced. This is just a more priority.
We have sunk costs on the scoreboard one, and my fear is that I think we just have to try to. Justin's been putting.
We have a tech coming out again this week, so it's an in process one that we're working on. That's a softball scoreboard.
Okay, so there might be another one coming later.
Down the road,
that's possible.
I think we got to try to limp along with that one, hopefully for another year, maybe 3 years, to try to. We should program it in. The other thing with the softball one is that it's one season, and it's a short season, and it's only score, ball, strikes, innings. It's not a timed sport.
So this is
go ahead,
called
Jared.
the upper field?
Just different line of questioning. I know the CRF, we have authorized fund usage for the controls that might not be done this year, but going by my memory, with the authorizations that we've given, that balance is roughly zero right now until we have the infusion for the next cycle.
That would be, on July 1. So just for your benefit, right now, after what actions you just took on the rear stairs, et cetera, you have $240,000 in the CRF. On July 1, there'll be a deposit of $200,000, so you'll have $440,000. If you were to approve this tonight at a cost of $30,000, you'll have $410,000 left to do your heating controls and your cistern project, and that is well within budget on those.
So the 240K that we currently have in there, I thought was allocated for projects.
We had allocated $250,000 for the heating controls and the cistern project.
So we're at negative 10,000 right now without the
No,
infusion.
because we wouldn't be doing those projects, we wouldn't be paying for them until after July 1 anyway. So that was factored in.
True, but the decision's been made to spend the money that is currently there.
Correct, because when I say spend the money, that's in terms of putting out RFPs and proceeding with it. You know, we need
It's
your
been
permission to
earmarked.
do that.
So, and we're expecting to have that $200,000 of unreserved fund balance ready to
Yes.
put into the account?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is really contingent on ensuring that the money's there.
The money will definitely be there. The money is there right now for this project because we're not doing the other ones. Did I didn't answer your question properly?
The money that you're trying to, from the motions that have been made from the board, the money has been earmarked, and though it is still in the account, it's already been,
Allocated.
in our eyes, allocated.
Correct.
For expenditure.
Right.
So therefore, we are at negative $10,000 in that account after all of our votes that we've
Correct.
done. So it's important to say, yes, the money's there, but it has been allocated for
Yes, that is
funds.
absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? So if, go ahead, Ellen.
I need clarity. Yes, negative 10, but did I just hear you say, I'm going to say we, but I don't know that the board did it, but are not doing what we've approved the monies for?
That's correct. We've placed the heating controls project on hold, and now we're placing the cistern project on hold because we had no bidders.
Okay.
And by the time that this project would proceed in terms of installation, when we would be invoiced, we would have an additional deposit of $200,000 into
Okay.
that CRF.
Okay, thank you. Do we
Anyone
need a
else?
motion?
Yeah, if we're gonna go forward.
Well, so that we can make a decision, I'm going
Yeah.
to move that we allocate $30,123 out of the CRF for the Upper Field School Board.
Perfect, thank you, Ellen. Do I have a second by Ginny? Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Um,
Scott.
My question for you is that, do you want me to explore down the road, I don't need to do it next meeting, but next fall or whatever, in terms of giving you what would be a proposal for quote-unquote advertising on the sign? Because if that is the case, that would have to go through your policy committee first.
Right.
And I can't do anything until it's addressed in your policy, and that takes a little bit longer.
It does. So we can put it through policy and have it reviewed and then
Yeah.
go from there.
Okay? Thank
That
you.
works. All right, so, Mr. Huft,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, thanks.
All right, so you're up next with athletics.
So if I can just maybe give a little bit of context, and then we'll have Justin kind of fill in the details.
Okay.
We've said all along that we would follow the guidance, and the NHIAA is the governing body that oversees high school athletics. And they had a meeting last Friday where they made some changes to their mask recommendations, and Justin had an athletic director meeting across Division I schools today, so this is sort of hot off the press. And Justin, nothing's changed since you sent this to me, right?
Nope.
Okay. So what the guidance is changing is for home games and practices, spectators are not required to, but are encouraged to wear face coverings when attending outdoor events for Goffstown High School teams. Family units should keep a social distance of at least 3 feet with other families and spectators. And we're continuing to require spectators in all our gymnasium to wear face coverings. So the only indoor sport we have this spring is boys volleyball. And in order to come into the gym, any spectators are wearing masks. That's not going to change. I don't know who's vaccinated. I don't know who's not vaccinated. I'm not going to have our staff engaging with people, showing vaccine cards. We're not going to do any of that stuff. But for outside, which is all other contests, the NHIAA has changed their guidance, and that's what Justin is recommending. Justin?
Yep. So that addresses the spectators, and it's really just changing it to a recommendation rather than require for our events here. So if you come to a softball game, baseball, you come to the rectangular field for lacrosse right now, that would be the guidance that we would be operating under. For student athletes, we would look to have, really it would reflect what our fall guidance was, where if you're actively playing in a practice or contest outdoors, you can choose whether or not to wear a mask. If you're on the sidelines, coaches included, you must still wear face coverings unless able to maintain a 3-foot spacing from others. And then it mentions again that we are continuing to require anyone present at a practice or game indoors to wear face coverings, including players and coaches. So that would be a change from what we had been doing this spring. It would really go back to what we did this fall and I thought it was effective in the fall. And then we would also add just a mention at the end that our school district will commit to following face covering policies of other school districts or venues when games are played at other facilities. So right now, if you were to go to Manchester, for example, they still do require face coverings, and our teams would commit to complying with that. And we would ask our spectators to as well.
Jenny, go ahead.
What are the spectator rules right now for outside sports?
We are asking them to wear face coverings.
How many spectators can come to a game?
So for our outdoor sports, we're limiting it to 4 per family, and we're asking it to be immediate family only. I will say that it's a little different when you have fields without fences. So our softball field is kind of adjacent to a parking lot. Our baseball field is downtown. So kind of managing flow in and out could be a challenge. It's actually gone very smoothly this spring, but that's what we're currently operating under. For gymnasium, where we can control entrances, we've been doing 2 spectators per athlete, and that's for home and away, and we ask that it be immediate family.
Who's going to be in charge of spacing?
In charge of? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Regulating spacing.
Spacing?
3 feet.
That would be the game manager. So I'm at most games. If I'm not, I have somebody there who's working in my stead.
You know, and I would say we're not going around with a tape measure. You know, so we would encourage people. It's a global pandemic. We would encourage people to stay away from one another, but you know, we're not going around with a tape measure saying you need to scoot over, you need to, you know, we've really tried to trust people to make good judgments. I would say people have been appreciative that they're able to be at games because not everywhere is letting fans come, including visiting fans. So right now, if you want to go to a game in Salem, you can't go as a visiting fan. So I think people appreciate that they're able to come here, and I think that the mindset that I've seen has been, you know what, we're glad to be there, let's follow their rules, let's not, you know, be ungrateful.
I would feel more comfortable with masks just because we're trying to keep the rest of the school year so that school's open and so the kids can go to the rest of their prom, graduation, end of school activities. And this is just one place where community transmission could be an issue.
Yeah, my support of this really just has to do with the fact that it's outdoors. And that we, you know, really haven't seen that level of transmissibility outdoors. Is it a risk? I think it is. I think everything's a risk. I think going to the grocery store is a risk. I think going to Cumbies is a risk. You know, in all likelihood, are people going to spread COVID outdoors? It does happen. It can happen. They need to be in close proximity. There needs to be the ability for the respiratory droplets to travel. And but Justin, any thoughts on that?
No, I can definitely respect where Jenny's coming from. And I would just echo what Brian said with the outdoors being the thing that makes it really different in my mind, just following the science. And I think that's kind of where the shift in guidance has come from when you look at the CDC.
But no changes for volleyball. Those kids are going to wear masks. They're going to wear masks. The spectators are going to wear masks. We're not going to change that because they're inside.
So Justin, just to clarify, because I think I didn't hear you right. So outside sports, if a student is playing, they can choose to wear a mask or not. If they're not playing, they have to wear a mask. And the spectators have to wear a mask or don't have to wear a mask?
Right now, they're
to
supposed
speak
to.
frankly, they would not.
What are we looking to switch to, not wearing a mask?
Right. It would be optional.
Recommended, not required.
Okay.
And it would be, and just to be clear, so if student athletes are on the sideline, if they're distanced, they would not be required to wear the mask either.
Okay.
So if you look at our lacrosse games and stuff where they're able to have quite a bit of distance, if they choose to.
Right.
They would not need to wear a mask in that situation either.
Now, are we letting outside families, not our home, but like away teams come to our games?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you would need a motion for us to approve this.
Only if we were going to adopt the changes.
Okay. So what, Shane, go ahead.
I just had a question. So their recommendations, my only hesitation was someone having to police that situation. I know you said game manager, but I know that can create conflict, and I do think outside, transmission is much less. That's my only hesitation. I know there's been a lot of conflict that's kind of arisen, so I'm inclined to support it, but that's my hesitation about it.
How much longer do we have? I mean, we're almost at the end of the school year, so how many more weeks are we talking?
We're 2 weeks in the regular season. We have this week and then next week. There will be postseason at that point, but it's 2
And how
full
long
weeks.
playoffs? A couple weeks, Justin?
Most likely a week, and if
A
you
week,
win a
okay.
few games in a row, then you could go into a second week.
So by the time school ends, sports will be done?
Yes.
Okay. Jenny?
What other towns other than Manchester are not allowing no masks? Do you know?
Manchester's a big one, and Rochester, the Spalding High School, and Salem, which have been that way all year. It's interesting. They're staying with that.
Nashua?
Nashua just reversed their policy earlier this evening, so they are not requiring masks. Bedford and Pinkerton, same thing.
Jared?
I'd like to make a motion to follow the NHIAA guidelines as presented.
All right, I have a motion from Jared. Do I have a second? By Shane. Any other discussion before I do roll call?
I just had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Janelle.
Are the students in school allowed the same consideration? Are they allowed to not wear masks outside if there's classes outside or they're eating outside?
What we've tried to do is the same thing we've tried to do inside, is that if kids are outside and they're distanced, if the teachers are approving mask breaks, that's fine. But kids at recess are supposed to be wearing masks. They're wearing masks throughout the day, except for times where they're eating, times where they're taking mask breaks, etc.
So athletes are allowed to play games and not wear masks, but students outside in the playground are not allowed the same.
Correct.
Is there a reason for that inconsistency?
Well, first of all, it has to do with the guidance coming out from the Athletic Association. So there is no equivalent of recess. This is a professional organization that oversees all of athletics at the high school level in the state. At this point, we do have high school students who have been vaccinated. I can I don't think Caleb would mind me sharing. He received his vaccine he shared with us earlier. My sons have both gotten the vaccine, so we do have a fair number of kids that have been vaccinated at the high school level, and of course we have 0 little kids that have been vaccinated.
Is that the reason that things are letting up with sports?
The reason that things are
Because of
being,
vaccination?
I'm not going to speak to why the NHIAA made the recommended changes that they made, but they did make those changes. So this just came from the NHIAA last Friday afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. All right, so I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion before I do roll call? All right, Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
No.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. So we have 1 no and the rest, yes, motion passed. Thank you, Mr. Huft, very much for coming.
Thank you.
Can go home, right?
Yep, thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a couple of board authorization requests. First one is a board motion is needed to grant continued authorization to the superintendent under the Superintendent's Emergency Operations Plan for COVID-19 as a temporary regulation to policy EBCF, pandemic, epidemic, emergencies, and to grant the superintendent or his designee authorization to respond at his or her discretion to changing public health circumstances and to allow the superintendent the ability to modify or adapt school policy as needed until the next successful school board meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Shane. I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Heather, yes, motion passed. The last one is a motion to grant the business administrator authorization to make payments out of sequence and to notify the board of such payments at the next scheduled school board meeting.
So moved.
By Ellen, do I have a second? By Shane. I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Heather, yes, motion passed. Now we're on to school staffing.
For notification, just wanted to inform the board of a leave of absence for Danielle McDougall, beginning in August with an end date to be determined. For your approval, we have a teacher resignation from Kimberly Gratton, high school special education teacher, and we have 2 nominations, one for Jennifer Crowley as a special education teacher at Goffstown High School. Jennifer is a longtime New Boston special education teacher, so we're excited to welcome her here to Goffstown High School. And then this may look like a familiar name to many of you. Nate Lambert, who was a longtime biology teacher at the high school, moved to Florida, and he's moving back. So we couldn't be more thrilled to
Great.
welcome Mr. Lambert back, and we're glad to have him and his wife returning.
Wonderful. It's too hot, huh?
I move approval of the resignations and the 2 nominations.
All right, I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny. I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Motion passed. And that was it with the staffing?
That was it.
All right, other business that may legally come before the meeting? Nothing? All right. We do have to go into non-public. So I'll need a motion to go into non-public session RSA 91-A semicolon 32K. Consideration by a school board of entering into a student or pupil tuition contract authorization by RSA 194 or RSA 195-A.
So moved.
By Ellen. Do I have a second? By Shane. I'll do roll call. Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Janelle?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Heather? Yes. So we are in non-public. So we'll take a 5-minute break while GTV cuts down, and then
Yep.
we'll get into it. So Janelle, make sure you're by yourself, please.
No problem.